Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Jessica Chambers. On December 6, 2014, at 20:09, emergency services responded to a report of a car on fire in a rural area. The first firefighters to arrive discovered a burning car and began extinguishing the flames immediately. The interior of the car was filled with thick black smoke that rose rapidly. As the rescuers poured foam on the car, they accidentally saw a dark figure slowly emerging from the nearby bushes. The figure looked like a young woman. The fire department approached and discovered that it was a young woman. She was severely burned, wearing only her underwear. The extent of her injuries, with burns covering her entire body. Her clothes had been burned, her skin was melting and slowly dripping, and her entire body was bleeding. Her hair had turned into a black ash, and her face was black with soot. Rescuers carefully wrapped the young woman in a blanket as she lay on the ground, waiting for paramedics to arrive. Firefighters were at her side, tending to her. Although she could barely move her lips due to the severity of her injuries, the woman still managed to speak. When asked for her attacker's name, some emergency responders heard the names Derek or Derek. She was airlifted from the small town to a hospital in Memphis. Unfortunately, the young woman's condition became critical. With approximately 93% of her body burned, she died from her injuries just 4 hours after arriving. The victim was identified as Jessica Chambers, a 19-year-old local resident. Jessica grew up in Cortland, where her mother and grandmother lived nearby. Her father and stepmother also lived in the same town but in a different location. She was a petite woman, but Jessica had a strong and determined personality. She experienced a rather complicated living environment. About her family, her father pleaded guilty to manufacturing methamphetamine and was arrested for drunk driving in the early 2000s. In 2006, her 28-year-old neighbor was shot multiple times in her yard. Growing up in such a negative environment, Jessica developed a rebellious personality. She smoked, argued with her parents, had unstable relationships with boyfriends, and had legal troubles. Jessica's behavior became more evident at the age of 17 after the death of her brother Alan in a car accident in 2012. She moved out of her mother's house a few months later because her mother did not approve of Jessica's new boyfriend. Jessica's childhood was very difficult. Her father was in prison for a while, but in 2014, he was released and worked as a mechanic at the local police department. Jessica used to deal illegal drugs and had ties to local gangs. However, Jessica is sweet and funny, and is respected and loved by most people. News of a burning car quickly spread throughout her small town. Jessica's father was quickly notified of the car fire. Upon hearing the news, he rushed to inform Jessica's mother of the tragic incident. They rushed to the hospital. Jessica's death shocked the nation, attracting widespread attention. Hundreds attended her funeral on December 13th, a memorial service to honor an active and ambitious teenager who had been a cheerleader and had big dreams. A thorough investigation into the high-profile case was launched, attracting great public interest. To assist local authorities, the FBI, ATF, and the U.S. Marshals were called in. Initial investigations suggested that the fire may have been caused by a car accident, but this theory was quickly dismissed. A closer inspection of the scene revealed no signs of emergency braking or obstructions, and an examination of the burned-out vehicle revealed no damage or signs of collision on the body. Arson therefore became the leading theory, but the police faced a challenge due to a lack of clues and evidence, slowing down the investigation. Following her death, some believed that Jessica had inadvertently put herself in danger by associating with a local gang. However, gang members have strongly denied any involvement and sent condolences to Jessica's family. The police have summoned several people for questioning, but have yet to gather any clues. The investigation has stalled. No suspects have been found, nor a motive for such a brutal act. Public pressure for the investigation to seek justice has slowed the investigation and continuously provided false clues about Jessica's life. Several theories have emerged on social media, suggesting that Brian Rudd, Jessica's ex-boyfriend from high school, may have acted out of jealousy. Another theory is that Jessica sold low-quality drugs to someone for a few $100s, potentially angering a drug dealer who sought revenge. District Attorney John Champion described the case as the most mysterious he has worked on in his 22 years in the county. He has been investigating Jessica's case since December, working with local police and multiple agencies, including the MBI, FBI, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, and the U.S. Marshals Service. During the investigation, they interviewed more than 130 people, some of whom have since been re-interviewed, including individuals named Eric and Derek. Despite these efforts, no suspects have been arrested. Police have recreated the final week of Jessica's life in detail. On December 5, 2014, her last day, Jessica received a cell phone call from a friend, urging her to drive to the M&M Mini Mart. There, she purchased $14 worth of gas and left at 5:15 p.m. About 30 minutes later, at 5:45 p.m., she contacted her mother to say she would be home soon. At that time, Jessica had her hair tied in a bun and was wearing camouflage pajama pants. After a few more stops, including one at an unidentified house and another in the nearest town, Jessica arrived at the location where her life would tragically end. It is likely that the person who would eventually take her life was in the car with her at the time. Meanwhile, surveillance footage captured a man in a striped shirt filling a gas tank and then driving off in the same direction as Jessica. Despite this clue, no further information about the man's movements after that point was available. Jessica's cell phone records revealed important information about her final moments. They indicated that she spent approximately 10 to 15 minutes near a stoplight on Highway 2, heading toward Batesville. However, there was an unexplained 62-minute gap between 6:30 p.m. and 7:32 p.m. By 7:30 p.m., her phone was at the location on Heron Road where her burning car was later discovered. Many questions remain about what Chambers was doing during this mysterious hour and what ultimately led to her tragic fate. The investigation was slow going. It wasn't until December 2015, in a separate case involving charges of illegal possession of weapons, narcotics, and counterfeit goods, that 17 suspected gang members were arrested. At the time, District Attorney John Champion did not expect any gang members to be directly involved in the arson. However, during plea negotiations, gang members were given the opportunity to cooperate with the investigation. As a result, they identified Quentin Tellis, a man who had been with victim Jessica about an hour before the fire. In February 2016, police temporarily closed the case to conduct a further investigation and determine the motive behind Jessica's disappearance. The lack of an official suspect led to a surge of unfounded speculation circulating online and throughout the town. As a result, the case attracted the attention of the police online, and a Facebook page called Justice for Jessica was created, offering a $50,000 reward for any information or clues that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator. Rumors also circulated online that Jessica, who had previously dated African American men, had been targeted by white supremacists for her involvement in interracial relationships. However, others suggested that the perpetrator was African American because Jessica had been in a gang, and that she may have tried to leave and was killed. None of these theories were ever officially confirmed. After examining Jessica's cell phone and social media activity, police were able to discover who she had been communicating with in the hours before her death. The investigation focused on Quentin Tellis, who initially claimed that their meeting had been arranged and communicated via text message, and that he barely knew her, simply asking her for a ride home. However, Further analysis of their messages uncovered inconsistencies in his story, leading to his arrest for the arson murder of Jessica Chambers. Text messages showed that Quinton had sent Jessica several intimate advances on the day of the tragedy. The timeline of events began when Jessica texted Quinton at 9:02 a.m. to say she had just woken up, and Quinton replied shortly afterwards that he had also woken up. Then, at 10:09 a.m., Quinton texted Jessica saying, "I'm ready." After the text, Jessica drove to the M&M gas station and was captured on surveillance footage leaving M&M a few minutes later, presumably to pick up Tellis. They then picked up a friend of Jessica's around 10:49 a.m. Jessica dropped Quinton off at around 2:03 p.m. Quinton sent Jessica another text, this time apparently asking for some affection. It was the fourth time in 4 days that he had asked for intimacy via text. Deleted texts were also recovered, including, "I'm so horny," and "Come lay with me," but Jessica did not respond. The passenger seat in Jessica's burned car was found reclined, a common position for intimate activity in a vehicle. Prosecutors used this as evidence to suggest that the two had engaged in or attempted to engage in intimate relations on the night of the incident. Quinton was charged with arson and Jessica's murder on February 24th. Building a solid case took time. Quinton Tellis' trial began in 2017 in Batesville, Mississippi, about 50 miles south of Memphis. To ensure safety, the trial had strict security measures in place, including segregating the jury and using metal detectors to screen attendees before they entered the courtroom. Prosecutor John Champion warned the jury that they would have to see horrifying images of Jessica Chambers' burned body and hear testimony from about 35 witnesses. According to police, Jessica met Quinton on Thanksgiving in November 2014. Quinton was 7 years older than Jessica at the time and had previously attended the same high school, which she had started in October 2014. Quinton had recently been released from prison, where he had served time for burglary. In court, prosecutor John Champion presented evidence of a series of text messages exchanged between Quinton and Jessica, including one on the day of her death in which Quinton asked for intimacy. And the front seat position of Jessica's burned car was found to be adjusted downward, consistent with the text messages found. Prosecutor John Champion claimed that Quinton attempted to end her life by strangling her, then, thinking she was dead, doused her with gasoline and set her on fire. A friend of Jessica's reported that the three of them spent the day before the incident driving together in Jessica's car. On the day of the incident, Quinton eventually admitted to police that he had seen Jessica that night and had gone to a fast food restaurant with her. However, Quinton claimed that he had an alibi, saying that he was with friends at the time of the fire. However, the friends he claimed to be with did not verify his alibi. Interestingly, a store surveillance camera captured Quinton a few miles away, buying a phone card for an acquaintance in Louisiana. FBI Special Agent Dustin Blunt revealed that Quinton had deleted Jessica's contact information and their text messages from his phone shortly after her death. When asked about this action, Quinton claimed that he was not trying to hide anything. He explained that he had deleted her contact number because he did not want to keep a deceased person's phone number in his phone since it would no longer be used. Notably, records show that Quinton sent private text messages to Jessica on the day of her death. FBI agent Dustin determined that Tellis and Chambers met through a mutual friend at a gas station in their hometown of Cortland. The two spent time together frequently, often driving around. Notably, Quinton lived with his mother in a trailer near the convenience store where Jessica was last seen before her murder. Notably, his DNA was found on Jessica's keys, and cell phone records confirmed his presence at the location on the night of the murder. Quinton, who maintained his innocence throughout the trial, was told by defense attorney Darla Palmer, who advised the jury to reject the cell phone location evidence, that it did not prove Quinton and Jessica were in the same place at the same time. Quinton repeatedly proclaimed his innocence to police. Even when threatened with the death penalty, He told police that he was telling the truth and was incapable of harming anyone. His family believes that police unfairly targeted Quinton due to the highly publicized racial tensions surrounding the case. To determine whether Jessica's murder was related to other recent fires in the area, police looked into possible connections to fires in Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. However, no connection was found. Despite this, the investigation has yet to produce conclusive evidence about a motive. Police said they have pursued several theories but have made little progress. Typically, identifying a suspect in a homicide is a relatively quick process, as law enforcement often relies on witnesses and informants on the street for leads. In this case, despite extensive community cooperation, DNA collection, and polygraph testing, no arrests have been made. Quinton Tellis' 2017 trial ended in a retrial. By the time the retrial began in 2018, Quinton was facing new investigations in Louisiana. He was being investigated for possible involvement in the death of student Ming Chin Xia, as well as for using stolen bank cards. In May 2019, Quinton was formally charged with second-degree murder in connection with the death of Ming Chin Xia. Sherry Flowers testified at the second trial that she picked up a hitchhiker the night of the incident. However, she did not recognize Quinton in court and admitted that she did not know the man she picked up. According to Sherry, a man flagged her down, and she stopped. She agreed to give the man a ride, describing him as a thin to medium-sized African-American man in his 20s. This description did not match Quinton, who was 26 at the time and 5 feet 9 inches. When asked why she did not contact the police in the first place, Flowers explained that she could not remember the incident and did not think it was related to the case. Prosecutors claimed that giving a hitchhiker a ride gave Quinton the opportunity to return to Jessica's car and set it on fire. However, the defense disputed the timing of the trip, arguing that the driver, Sherry, was unsure of the exact time she picked up the hitchhiker, only remembering that she had picked someone up. During the investigation, Jessica's car keys were found in a ditch 2 days after her death, near the location where the hitchhiker was picked up. The defense objected to admitting the keys into evidence, arguing that it was impossible to prove where the keys had been before they were discovered. During Quinton Tellis' retrial, the jury visited the crime scene and heard additional testimony. The second trial was extremely emotional. Witnesses broke down on the stand, and spectators wept as pictures of the young woman, Jessica Chambers' burned stomach and face, were shown. Despite a second trial, the jury was unable to reach a verdict, deadlocked for the second time in 2 years on the question of Quinton Tellis' guilt in the arson of Jessica Chambers and her car. Although the suspect has been tried twice, no verdict has been reached and the case remains officially unsolved. Online police continue to search social media for any clues that may have been overlooked. Jessica Chambers' death initially attracted significant media attention. Over time, as media interest waned, the story attracted the attention of internet police around the world. One aspect of the case that remains widely discussed is what happened to Jessica between the time she left home and her death. On the night of the incident, Jessica left home at 5 p.m. and told her mother that she was going to a nearby gas station. Surveillance footage from the gas station shows Jessica visiting the station twice. The footage shows Jessica filling up, then walking toward the store and waving to someone off camera before approaching them. The identity of the person Jessica waved to on the day of her death remains the subject of much speculation. A personal tragedy becomes a public spectacle when it evokes widespread compassion and support. The Justice for Jessica Facebook memorial page, run by Jessica's half-sister, is a prime example. The page brought together people from around the world who were moved by the tragic story of a young woman burned alive. As a result, Jessica's family and friends received an outpouring of support in the form of letters, words of encouragement, and donations. People also donated gifts and books in her name. A memorial quilt was made of bright pink patches with a zebra print, along with her photo and her birth and death dates. The quilt was particularly notable because it was made by well-wishers from all over the world. One mysterious detail about the quilt was a square stitched with the phrase "secret group," a phrase whose meaning remains unknown to this day. No one has yet been held accountable for Jessica's tragic death. Quentin Tellis, a 29-year-old man already serving time for another crime, remains a suspect, but justice for Jessica has yet to be served. Sadly, Jessica's mother, Lisa, passed away on October 29, 2021, at the age of 52, without being able to see justice for her daughter. The possibility of a third trial in Jessica's case, which involved the horrific act of being burned alive, remains uncertain. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Diogo Goncalves. Diogo Goncalves, born in 1999 in the city of Albura, Portugal, is an only child in a poor but hardworking family. His family made a living mainly from the unstable tourism industry. His parents always considered Diogo a good son. Those who knew him described Diogo as kind, responsible, hardworking, reliable, and very friendly. He enjoyed making friends and was close to his family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown. After graduating, he began studying computer science. To pay for his studies and living expenses, Diogo applied for a job at McDonald's in 2015, at the age of 16. When he was 17, his life suddenly took a major turn when his father suffered a stroke and fell into a vegetative state. That same year, while Diogo and his mother were trying to cope with his father's difficult situation, another tragedy occurred. Diogo's mother, who had always supported him in his studies and upbringing, was involved in a traffic accident. While she was on her way to work at the shopping mall where she worked as a cleaner, a car hit her, dragging her for several meters and causing her to die from her injuries. Although the driver fled, the police identified him and brought him to court. While Diogo awaited the verdict on the perpetrator of his mother's death, he had to move to a medical facility to receive the necessary care. His aunt, concerned about Diogo's situation, invited him to live with her, but the two had a serious disagreement. After a few weeks, they could no longer live together. Diogo told a friend about his situation, and the friend's parents offered him a room in their house in the Albufeira neighborhood. Here, Diogo was close to friends and people who helped him feel at home. Despite his young age, Diogo has shown an excellent ability to handle and overcome difficulties with patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo graduated with a degree in computer technology and completed a 6-month internship at Villa Vita Park, a top 5-star hotel. Diogo's abilities impressed the directors, and they offered him a job at the hotel as a technician. In 2018, Diogo decided to accept the offer and left the fast food chain where he had worked for almost a year as a shift manager. He entered a new phase of his life, envisioning a future filled with opportunities that would help him rise above the hardships he had experienced. After working at the company for a while and contemplating brighter days, he decided to buy a car. Diogo got along well with his colleagues, especially a girl he had a crush on, Maria Malvero, a 19-year-old hotel security guard. Maria Malvero was born into a normal family and, like Diogo, has gone through many hardships. Her mother suffered from mental illness, and her father left when she was very young, leaving her never to see him again. Maria, who works in security, became interested in martial arts and started practicing karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer but was rejected by the academy because of her tattoos. This frustrated her, and she decided to join the SEER Info training course, which specializes in training security guards for the private security sector. Diogo has feelings for Maria and has expressed them openly to her from the beginning, but she does not reciprocate and maintains a cold attitude. Diogo is very fond of Maria, so much so that he turns down an attractive job at the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon just because he does not want to be away from her. He often brings her meals while she is on duty. Over time, Diogo and Maria became close, and people around them saw them as a couple, although there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she did not want a relationship with him because she had just gotten out of a toxic relationship with a naval officer. However, she kept in touch with Diogo, causing him to harbor hopes of a future with her. Diogo did not give up hope and always tried to be close to her and please her. One day, Diogo was devastated when he accidentally saw a video on social media of Maria kissing another girl. Diogo was upset because he thought she should have told him that she didn't like boys, which was why they would never be together. Diogo's best friend, Fabio, tried to reassure him by saying that girls sometimes do that, but Diogo didn't believe him and insisted that Maria had lied to him, which was why she refused to be with him. Despite his disappointment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and Maria continued to accept his gifts and invitations to dates. Diogo tried to take her home several times, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend and she didn't want to let another man into her apartment. Time passed, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which had occurred 3 years earlier. After receiving the sum of €70,000, the young man decided it was time to buy a house so that he would no longer have to pay rent. Diogo shared the news of his mother's insurance money with Maria. A few weeks later, Maria decided to quit her job at the hotel. She said that she could no longer bear the comments of her colleagues about her alleged relationship with Diogo. Maria also justified it by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention because of her mental illness. At that time, Diogo had no reason to doubt Maria's words. However, later events showed that her decision to quit her job at the hotel was for darker reasons, and that is when the third character in the story, Mariana, 20, appears. She works as a nurse at the hospital and has a stable relationship with Maria. Maria and Mariana live together at Mariana's parents' house, as they are not yet financially stable enough to have their own house where they can enjoy their relationship. This is exactly Maria's plan when she learns about the large amount of money that Diogo will receive. From that moment on, Maria begins to get closer to Diogo. It turns out that Maria has shared information with Mariana, and together they decide to trick Diogo into gaining access to his bank account data and steal the money he received. The problem arises when one day, after being rejected by Maria several times, Maria suddenly tells Diogo that she wants to spend a romantic evening with him. This was truly a gift for Diogo. He couldn't believe his ears. After waiting so long, the thought of being with the girl he loved made him extremely happy. The meeting was set for Friday evening, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was delighted and had no idea why the girl suddenly changed her mind. As soon as Diogo entered, Mariana gave him the orange juice she had brought herself, but the drink contained an unexpected ingredient: 3 ampoules of diazepam, a central nervous system drug with anti-anxiety and sedative effects. Mariana was the one who suggested using this substance, having stolen the drug from the hospital where she worked. Mariana's plan was to anesthetize Diogo, access his bank information, and possibly manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone lock. Mariana is said to have waited in a car outside the house while her friend carried out the plan. She even texted Maria several times to see if the drug was working, as it took longer than she had anticipated. The situation inside the house became increasingly tense. Diogo did not understand what was happening and began to get anxious. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising to dance erotically, but first, she had to tie him to a table. After being in that position for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became aggressive and began to beat Diogo. Using her martial arts skills, Maria overpowered Diogo, knocked him to the floor, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana, Maria then told her to go inside the apartment, and when she entered, she found Diogo lying on the floor. Mariana asked Maria what happened and criticized her for going off plan. The original plan was just to steal the key and take his money. When Diogo was unresponsive, Mariana performed CPR. However, when he regained consciousness, he became very agitated and tried to attack Mariana. In response to Diogo's reaction, Maria overpowered him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and strangling him again. Diogo lost his life at the hands of the girl he loved. His body was found in Maria and Mariana's living room, and soon after, they began their evil plan. They cut off his thumb and index finger to unlock his phone, log into the mobile payment app, and transfer money. This process lasted for several days due to the daily transaction limit at that time. Since Diogo was scheduled to go to work the next day, Maria and Mariana devised a plan to prevent Diogo's coworkers from discovering his absence. Maria and Mariana impersonated Diogo to text one of his coworkers. The colleague received a message from Diogo's number, saying that he would not be able to come to work and needed a replacement. However, this message seemed like an unannounced absence, which was unlike Diogo, who did not like to change shifts, so the message felt strange to the colleague. The colleague then asked Diogo if there was a problem and was told that everything was fine. The conversation with the hotel staff and people close to Diogo continued throughout Friday and part of Saturday, but these messages were increasingly uncharacteristic of him. On Saturday morning, Diogo's boss received a text message saying that he would not be returning to work because he had met a French woman and was moving in with her. This story seemed very strange to the boss because Diogo was a responsible person and would never quit his job so suddenly. In search of answers, the boss started calling Diogo, but he did not answer. He then received another message saying that he was not well enough to talk on the phone. Diogo's boss replied that he could only calm down if they could talk. He wanted to hear his voice and his explanation for what was happening. The reactions of Diogo's relatives to the messages Maria and Mariana sent convinced the girls to change their plans to explain their boyfriend's sudden disappearance. They decided to make it seem as if Diogo had decided to end his life and planned to dismember his body to get rid of the evidence. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, about a forensic scientist who kills criminals and evades justice by removing traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After carrying out their evil plot, they stuffed Diogo's body into a trash bag and put it in the trunk of their car. They went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where their hugs and laughter were captured on security cameras. They then went to a resident's house to begin dismembering the victim. Finally, Maria and Mariana placed Diogo's body in a black bag and put the rest of the body in a container. Meanwhile, at Mariana's parents' house, Diogo's friends launched a campaign to report him missing and contacted the authorities. They had to wait the required 48 hours to officially declare him missing. Maria and Mariana then left the house. Maria drove Diogo's car to the cliffs near the San Vicente Lighthouse in Cabo. Mariana followed Maria in her car. At around 2 p.m. that same day, Mariana threw Diogo's body off the cliff. She then left Diogo's car nearby. They thought that this way they could make it look like Diogo had committed suicide. Maria had no idea that instead of falling into the sea, the body would get stuck on a rock. They then left together in Mariana's car. They drove about 7 kilometers in 12 minutes to the Inferno Dago waterfall in the town of Tavira, where they threw Diogo's remains into the water. Shortly thereafter, Diogo's car was discovered in a parking lot near the Cabo de São Vicente lighthouse. According to multiple sources, 2 laptops were found in the car. Police were called to the scene and conducted a search on both land and sea. As a result, the body of a young man was discovered, partially covered by a black trash bag. At the same time, at another location on the coast, a French couple was stunned to discover Diogo's head. Diogo's hands and feet were also found after a thorough police search. Investigators said the circumstances of Diogo's death were strange. He was brutally murdered despite being a quiet person who did not associate with people of questionable reputation. Investigators could not find any hostile forces against Diogo. The police continued to investigate and soon discovered that Diogo had received a large inheritance after the death of his mother. Through the wire transfer investigation, they discovered that a large sum of money had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria. Detectives tracked down Maria to find out why Diogo's money had ended up in her hands. Maria tried to convince the police that she had killed Diogo because he had abused her. Maria claimed that was the reason she had left the hotel before the incident. However, when police examined text messages between the victim and Maria, they found this was not true. Maria said that she and Diogo had become close after she left her job. During her first meeting with the police, Maria claimed that she was the only person responsible for planning and carrying out the shooting. Maria insisted that Mariana had nothing to do with the crime. However, Mariana's testimony contradicted Maria's. Mariana explained that Maria said she wanted to rob Diogo of his money and intended to kill him. Mariana said Maria wanted to make him suffer so that he would give her his bank account password. The evidence gathered by investigators was enough to convict Maria and Mariana. Detectives had Diogo's phone records, cell phone records, and ATM surveillance video. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and appeared in court in June of that year. The judge followed Maria's account of the events, and Maria pleaded guilty while repeatedly denying Mariana's involvement in the case. She said Diogo's body had been in a suitcase in a car parked in the garage for 2 days, and that's where the remains were dismembered. The judge then asked Mariana where she was when Diogo's body was dismembered. It was notable that the joints of the body were separated with great precision. All eyes in the courtroom were on Mariana, who was also a longtime nurse. Mariana answered all the questions and said that everyone knew she worked at the hospital, so they suspected that she was the one who dismembered the body. She further explained that using the internet, the matter could be cleared up. The judge ordered Maria and Mariana to be detained because this was a serious crime under the law. The crime was committed in a cold, calculated, reckless, and extremely cruel manner. A few months later, the trial took place on February 24, 2021. In her testimony at the trial on February 26, 2021, Maria stated that she initially sought revenge on Diogo for his violent behavior but did not intend to kill him. She admitted that her goal was to humiliate him. Maria also confirmed that her friend had no connection with Diogo and did not know about the murder. Maria argued that her actions were not motivated by Diogo's money. In addition, Maria and Mariana attended the trial together but avoided looking at each other. It was rumored that after their arrest and imprisonment, they ended their relationship. On April 27, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Maria was found guilty of aggravated murder, complicity in indignity to a corpse, robbery, unlawful access, fraud, carjacking, and illegal possession of a weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay €265,000 in compensation to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of murder but convicted of desecration of a corpse, complicity, and fraud. She was sentenced to 4 years in prison for these charges. However, she was released because the charges she was convicted of did not require pre-trial detention until the final verdict was delivered. The court determined that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo showed that she had no intention of killing him. The judge took into account Mariana's confession, in which she accepted full responsibility for her actions. Despite this, the Portuguese public disagreed with the verdict, considering Mariana as guilty as Maria of the crimes against Diogo. After the verdict, Mariana left the court through the back door, where her father, who had attended all the hearings, was waiting for her. Neither Mariana nor her father would speak to reporters. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Wang Nan. Wang Nan, born in 1987 in Nanjing, China, a major city and former capital, Wang Nan grew up in a relatively affluent family. Her parents provided her with the best possible education and encouraged her to develop her talents. After completing her secondary education, Wang Nan enrolled in a prestigious university, where she studied business and finance, and also learned several foreign languages. Upon graduation, she landed a job at a large travel agency, where she quickly proved herself to be a valuable, responsible, and motivated employee. Her career advanced rapidly, and she was soon sent to Thailand to head a new branch and oversee its development. Wang Nan worked as a top manager for several years before deciding to leave the agency to start her own business. She opened a Chinese restaurant in Bangkok, which she managed successfully, and it eventually grew into a small but popular chain. Wang Nan was a thriving young entrepreneur who had devoted her life to her career. With her constant business engagements, she barely had time for socializing or dating, and her loneliness became a normal part of her life. At almost 30 years old, Wang Nan was well established in Thailand, having lived there for a while and become proficient in the language. However, she strived for further improvement, taking additional courses to learn Thai at a training center. There, she met a young man named Yu Xiaodong, who initially stared at her before introducing himself in his native language. They exchanged brief conversations, and he inquired about her reason for studying the language. Wang Nan replied that it was for business purposes, and Yu Xiaodong proposed exchanging business cards to potentially meet up Sunday. Although Wang Nan was not interested in continuing the conversation, she still politely gave him her business card. Yu Xiaodong also gave Wang Nan his own business card, which said that he worked in the import-export industry in Bangkok. Not very impressed, Wang Nan put the business card in her wallet and forgot about it. Yu Xiaodong was the only one who showed genuine interest in Wang Nan, and he wasted no time in calling her the very next day. However, she was preoccupied with work and couldn't spare even a few minutes to talk, so she declined his invitation to meet for coffee. A few days later, Yu Xiaodong asked her out again, but Wang Nan turned him down once more, citing her busy schedule and preparations for an upcoming business conference where she hoped to expand her professional network. Undeterred, Yu Xiaodong showed up at the conference with a stunning bouquet of flowers and waited for Wang Nan to become available. When she was free, he approached her and asked her out once more. This time, Wang Nan was charmed by his persistence, which was a new experience for her. No one had ever pursued her so relentlessly before, so she agreed to meet him for dinner. As it turned out, Yu Xiaodong's interest in Wang Nan was more than just a passing infatuation. He was completely smitten. He showered her with attention, surprise gifts, and romantic gestures, including sending flowers to her doorstep every morning with sweet notes attached. He also called her at least twice a day to wish her good morning and good night. Wang Nan had mixed emotions about the situation. While she was irritated by Yu Xiaodong's all-consuming infatuation, she was also flattered that someone was making such an effort to win her heart. As a result, she found herself unexpectedly entering into a romantic relationship. Yu Xiaodong went out of his way to woo her, not only romantically but also by trying to be perfect in every aspect of their relationship. He shared her interests and opinions, learned to cook her favorite meals, and planned exciting activities for them to enjoy together. He was also eager to help her with her work and household chores at a moment's notice. Wang Nan was over the moon with happiness, feeling as though she was living in a fairy tale. Yu Xiaodong's behavior, however, was moving at a breakneck pace. Despite having only been together for a few months, he was already making plans for their wedding and discussing potential names for their future children. This made Wang Nan uncomfortable, but Yu Xiaodong would counter by pointing out that they were both in their 30s and that it was time for them to start thinking about building a family. That night, Yu Xiaodong wrote a heartfelt letter to Wang Nan, expressing his deep affection and commitment to being a good husband and father. The next morning, he arrived at her doorstep with a bouquet of flowers, reiterating his seriousness about marrying her. Wang Man jokingly mentioned that the courthouse wouldn't open for another hour and a half, but Yu Xiaodong suggested they go there immediately. To her surprise, the courthouse was open, and the officer responsible for registering marriages was already at his desk, ready to formalize their union. Yu Xiaodong had secretly arranged for a hasty marriage ceremony to take place early in the morning. The whole event was unusual and lacking in formality. There were no guests, no exchange of rings, no wedding dress or veil, and no commemorative photographs. Wang Man couldn't shake the feeling that the whole thing wasn't really happening, especially since she hadn't even introduced her new husband to her mother, with whom she was extremely close. Before she knew it, she was holding a marriage certificate in her hand, and her newlywed husband was standing beside her, beaming with satisfaction. Wang Man's marriage was troubled from the start. She had second thoughts about marrying Yu Xiaodong almost immediately after the wedding. Initially, she had hoped he would be a reliable partner, a man she could depend on. Unfortunately, her expectations were not met, and her new husband's true nature soon revealed itself. Yu Xiaodong spent most of his time at home playing video games, using his wife's money without contributing to their household expenses. Whenever his wife asked him why he wasn't working, he claimed his business was slow due to seasonal fluctuations and that he was just taking a break. However, her suspicions grew as time passed, and she decided to investigate his business. Her findings shocked her. His supposedly successful import-export company existed only on paper and business cards. Wang Man was horrified, realizing too late that she should have had a prenuptial agreement. Now, her husband could freely spend her earnings, and if they divorced, he would claim her assets. During a tense conversation, Yu Xiaodong broke down in tears, promising to turn his life around and find a good job. However, it soon became apparent that he had no intention of looking for work and was content to rely on his wife's support. Yu Xiaodong, a grown man, consistently acted like a child. He spent most of his time playing computer games and expected his wife, Wang Nan, to pay for his personal expenses whenever he helped out around the house or assisted her at the restaurant. Wang Nan eventually had enough and told him she would no longer give him money unless he got a job. The next day, Yu Xiaodong disappeared, taking their marriage certificate and Wang Nan's identity card with him. Wang Nan only discovered the missing documents that evening when her accountant called to inquire about a large transfer of funds from her account. She was shocked, as she had not authorized the transfer. However, she immediately suspected her husband's involvement. It turned out that Yu Xiaodong had transferred more than $500,000 into his own account, using the stolen documents to deceive the bank into thinking it was their joint decision to transfer their shared money. Wang Nan quickly reported the theft to the police, who tracked down Yu Xiaodong a few hours later as he attempted to withdraw some of the stolen money. Confronted by the police and his wife, Xiaodong broke down and begged for forgiveness on his knees. He confessed to losing a large sum of money through gambling, which had led to threats of death and demands to repay the debt. This was not his first brush with the law, as he had previously served an 8-year prison sentence for robbery in his home country of China. Wang Man was consumed by shame as she learned the truth about her husband's past. Despite this, she believed that his addiction to gambling was a disease that could be overcome, and she wanted to help him recover and return to a normal life. To support him, Wang Nan agreed to pay off half of his debt and offered him a job as heater of one of her restaurants. Initially, Yu Xiaodong appeared to be grateful for the opportunity and took his new role seriously. He even developed a promising strategy for the restaurant's growth. However, his enthusiasm was short-lived. Before long, he began to spend more time playing computer games and indulging in other leisure activities. Meanwhile, one man discovered she was pregnant and shared the news with her husband. Yu Xiaodong initially expressed reservations about the pregnancy, and in a moment of hesitation, asked his wife to consider an abortion, which she flatly refused. The disagreement escalated to the point where he threatened divorce and division of their property, but eventually, his demeanor softened, and he apologized for his rash words. Yu Xiaodong later admitted that his outburst was driven by emotional anxiety, but ultimately, he was happy about the impending arrival of their child. However, things took a dramatic turn 2 months later. During a fateful trip, Yu Xiaodong suggested that his wife purchase life insurance, citing the pregnancy as a reason to safeguard her well-being and that of their unborn child in the event of any unforeseen circumstances. This seemingly caring gesture came after a period of harmony in their marriage, where he had been attentive, supportive, and diligent in his role as a husband and expectant father. Wan Nan quickly agreed to her husband's suggestion and even wondered why she hadn't thought of it herself. They purchased insurance the very next day. A couple of weeks later, Yu Xiaodong proposed a vacation to help them relax and unwind. Wan Man was initially hesitant, but her husband was insistent. He pointed out that they had never had a honeymoon and that traveling with a baby would be difficult in the coming years. He also felt that they needed a break to clear their minds of the stress and negativity they had been experiencing. Wan Man was eventually won over by her husband's arguments and agreed to the trip. He took charge of planning the entire vacation, choosing the destination, booking the hotel, and organizing activities that would be enjoyable and educational, yet not too strenuous for Wang Nan's pregnant state. Wang Man was happy to leave the planning to her husband and was pleased to see how much effort he was putting into making their vacation special. On June 7th, they visited the park for the first time and spent most of the day exploring its many beautiful sights and lookouts. However, as the summer evening wore on, the park became increasingly crowded, with tourists everywhere. As the sun began to set, Wang Nan noticed that her husband, Yu Xiaodong, was growing angry and nervous. When she asked him what was wrong, he explained that the crowds were ruining their chance to enjoy a romantic sunset in peace. Despite his initial frustration, Yu Xiaodong tried to make the most of the situation, suggesting that they could still have a romantic moment as the sun set. As the park began to clear out, he climbed the fence of the observation deck and called out to his wife, Wan Nan, to join him, promising her an incredible view. However, Wang declined, citing the darkness and potential danger. Yu Xiaodong became angry but eventually returned to his wife, suggesting that they should come back to the park another time to watch the sunrise together. The Wang Nan and Yu Xiaodong returned to their hotel late on Saturday night, so they decided to sleep in and head back to the reserve early on Sunday morning. As planned, they woke up at 3 a.m. on June 9th and left for the national park while it was still dark outside. Their goal was to catch the first rays of the rising sun. When they arrived, they found the park nearly empty, with hardly any other visitors. They watched the sunrise together on an observation deck. Then, Yu Xiaodong encouraged his wife, Wan Nan, to join him at the cliff's edge to see some ancient rock paintings. Initially hesitant, Wan Nan trusted her husband's assurance that he would help her climb down and back up safely. As they took in the breathtaking view, Yu Xiaodong suddenly asked Wan Nan if she regretted anything in life. She replied that she did not. However, in a shocking turn of events, Yu Xiaodong's demeanor changed. He touched his wife's hair, kissed her cheek, whispered "die" in her ear, and then pushed her off the cliff. To avoid detection, he checked their surroundings to make sure no one had witnessed the incident. Looking down, he couldn't see where Wan Nan had fallen, and the silence indicated that there were no witnesses below. Yu Xiaodong calmly walked towards the park exit, planning to report the incident after his wife was surely dead. However, hikers who had wandered off the trail spotted Wang Nan's body on the rocks and immediately called for rescue, reporting the incident. As Yu Xiaodong was leaving the reserve, several emergency vehicles sped past him, sirens blaring. Realizing what was happening, he quickly returned to the scene, pretending to be distressed. There, he put on a convincing performance, crying and begging for help. Convinced that his wife was dead and no one would discover the truth, he remained unaware that Wang Nan's fall had been broken by tree branches, which reduced her speed before she landed on bushes and then rolled onto the rocks. This series of events cushioned the impact, saving her life and that of their child, although she suffered severe injuries. Yu Xiaodong was overcome with grief, crying and lamenting the loss of his wife and child. However, his wife suddenly regained consciousness and attempted to speak, but was unable to. The people around her noticed the genuine horror on Yu Xiaodong's face, but he quickly composed himself and leaned in close to his wife. In a hushed tone, he warned her in Chinese to remain silent if she wanted to survive. Wang Nan's injuries were severe, including head trauma, multiple fractures, lacerations, soft tissue contusions, ruptured internal organs, and massive blood loss. Her spine was also severely damaged, leaving doctors concerned that even if she survived, she would likely be paralyzed and never walk again. One man spent several days in a coma, connected to life support machines, during which time her husband remained by her side constantly. However, despite his devoted appearance, Yu Xiaodong's intentions were sinister. Every time he was alone with his wife, he thought about how to complete the job without arousing suspicion. His actions were a ruse, hiding his true intentions behind a mask of love and devotion that he examined the devices, but couldn't find a way to quietly disable them. Wang Nan slowly regained consciousness. When she did, her husband was beside himself with fear. He stayed with her constantly, terrified that she would reveal the truth to the police at any moment. When they were alone, he threatened her again, saying he had nothing to lose. During the initial police interrogation, the Wang Nan supported her husband's claim that her fall was caused by dizziness. However, when her husband briefly left the room, Wang Nan asked the nurse to call the police again and prevent her husband from re-entering. It was then that she recounted the disturbing story of her fall, alleging that her husband had attempted to kill her. Yu Xiaodong suddenly burst into the room, shouting that his wife was delusional due to her head injury and that he would never harm her or their baby. His explanation was not believable, and he was arrested on the same day. At the hospital, he was charged with multiple crimes, including attempted murder and intimidation after her husband was taken into custody and sent to jail to await trial. Wang Nan finally felt a sense of relief. Although she still had a long and difficult recovery ahead of her, she now felt safe. Wang Nan initially held on to hope that her pregnancy could be saved, despite the severe fall. However, her medical team advised her to terminate the pregnancy due to the large amounts of painkillers and antibiotics she was receiving, as well as the multiple surgeries she underwent under general anesthesia. The doctors prioritized Wang Nan's life, warning her that the fetus was unlikely to survive the strong medications. This news came as a devastating shock to Wang Nan, but she ultimately followed the doctor's advice. During the trial, Yu Xiaodong vehemently denied any wrongdoing, sticking to his claim that the incident was an accident. He remained calm and composed in prison, hiring skilled lawyers and expressing confidence that he would either be acquitted or receive a lenient sentence. In contrast, the investigators and prosecutor were convinced that Yu Xiaodong had deliberately committed the crime. Motivated by the prospect of collecting a substantial insurance payout and inheriting his wife's fortune, which was valued at nearly $2.5 million at the time. During an interrogation, Yu Xiaodong made a shocking revelation about his motive for the heinous crime. He disclosed that he was angry with his wife for not paying off his entire debt, which had accumulated due to his gambling habit. In his mind, if his wife truly loved him, she would have cleared all his debts since she had the financial means to do so. This perceived betrayal led Yu Xiaodong to believe that his wife did not love him, and therefore, he felt justified in punishing her. After making this astonishing confession, the defendant became silent, seemingly aware that he had revealed too much. He attempted to retract his statement, claiming that he had been misunderstood. Nevertheless, his unexpected admission, combined with Wang Nan's testimony, was sufficient to secure a lengthy prison sentence. In March 2021, Yu Xiaodong was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, he and his lawyers filed multiple appeals, and 6 months later, the Thai court showed unusual leniency by reducing the life sentence to 10 years in prison. Wang Nan and her family were shocked and outraged by the lenient sentence given to Yu Xiaodong, believing it would set a bad precedent and encourage others to commit similar heinous crimes. Yu Xiaodong received a sentence of 10 years for attempting to murder his pregnant Wang Nan. As of now, Yu Xiaodong is serving her 10-year sentence while Wang Nan is challenging the court's decision. Meanwhile, Yu Xiaodong is filing appeals to prove her innocence. Wang Nan has successfully restarted her business in 2023 and also established an organization that provides support to women who have been affected by domestic violence. She writes about her personal experiences and warnings for women on her blog. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in Weatherford, Texas in 1963, and his future wife, Karen Kaler, was born in the same city 2 years later. They met in the early 1980s while attending a university in Texas. At the time, Craig was a senior studying engineering, and Karen was a freshman in the humanities department. Despite their different fields of study, they quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. After graduating, they had a small, intimate wedding with close friends and family. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, followed by Lauren in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle, with a higher-than-average income for their area. In 1999, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a major utility company in Weatherford, which coincided with the birth of their son, Sean. Craig adored his son and, with his increased salary, purchased a spacious house in the city's most prestigious neighborhood and a family car. Karen stayed at home to care for their children, and Craig became the primary breadwinner. From the outside, their family appeared to be living a perfect life. Their 3 children have also had many successes in their fields. Emily and Lauren are talented in sports and music. Emily studies at a prestigious pharmacy college and Lauren hopes to attend a conservatory. Sean, on the other hand, showed a keen interest in mathematics and had dreams of becoming an archaeologist. The family's home life seemed idyllic, Craig providing for the family and Karen taking care of the household and raising the children. However, the family was struggling with hidden problems. In 2007, Karen confided in her sister Linda, revealing that she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown due to Craig's controlling behavior. Craig exerted total control over Karen's daily life, demanding a detailed account of every expense, no matter how small, and requiring her to report her whereabouts at all times. The family lives on a strict schedule, with Craig setting their daily routines, including bedtime, wake-up time, meal times. This rigidity makes Karen feel suffocated and trapped. Over time, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became more demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move. She felt like she had no time left for herself, there was only duty to complete. Karen tried to meet her husband's demands, hoping he would ease up and they could return to their normal life. However, Craig seemed to enjoy exerting control and refused to change. Linda was extremely worried about her sister's confide. Like everyone else, She saw Craig as the ideal husband, father, and family man, only to discover he was a controlling man. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family. Additionally, she and her children relied on Craig financially. So, she decided to find a job that would give her a stable income. She joined a local gym without telling her husband, using it as an escape to clear her mind and work through her emotions. She spent several hours there every day, scheduling her time around her husband Craig's work schedule so he wouldn't notice. Not long after, the gym manager noticed her because of her attractive appearance, excellent fitness, and her hard work. Karen was given the chance to work as a fitness with the possibility of a permanent contract. This was a dream come true for her, as she could now get paid for doing something she loved. However, she was worried about how her husband, Craig, would react when he found out. When Craig found out about Karen's new job, she thought he would be angry and forbid her to continue. Surprisingly, he received this news calmly and even seemed pleased that she had found a way to make money on her own. He had a few conditions. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and not let her new job interfere with their intimate life. Karen found these conditions acceptable, as she now had more freedom and independence. As Karen settled into her new job, she met a new instructor named Sonny Reese, and they quickly became friends. For Karen, who had spent years at home with little social interaction, Sonny became a trusted confidant. The two women spent time together at work, went for walks, had coffee, and shared heartfelt conversations. But little did Karen know, this new friendship would soon lead to unexpected romance and a complicated love triangle. It didn't take long for Karen and Sonny's friendship to evolve into a romantic relationship. At first, they kept their feelings a secret from everyone. However, after some time, Karen decided it was necessary to be honest with her husband, Craig. She spent months preparing for this conversation, searching for the right words and worrying about the potential consequences. Eventually, she confessed to Craig. Craig's reaction to his wife's revelation was surprisingly calm. However, the next day, he made an unexpected condition for accepting Karen's relationship with Sonny, which was that he wanted to be a part of it. Karen was shocked and unsure of how to respond to her husband's talk. Nevertheless, Craig took the initiative and began wooing Sonny, sending her flowers and gifts. He seemed to view this as an opportunity to revitalize his intimate life and bring new passion to his marriage. Initially, Karen and Sonny agreed to Craig's proposal. However, they soon realized that his intentions were aimed at domination. However, their unusual love triangle was short-lived. Craig demanded that Karen end the affair immediately. Despite this, Karen continued to see Sonny, as she had genuinely fallen in love. After almost 20 years of marriage, Karen seemed ready to leave her husband for someone new. This led to a series of secret actions, including moving to another state, scheduling secret meetings. In an attempt to salvage his family, Craig thought it best to relocate to another state. He started job hunting, sending out his resume, and soon secured a role as a water director for a large company in Columbia, Missouri, not far from Kansas. Craig hoped that by moving to a new state, his wife's affair with Sonny would end, and their family life would normalize. However, the summer 2008 move proved challenging for the family, as the kids had to switch schools, make new friends, and adapt to a new city. Although the family was already financially comfortable, Craig's new job nearly doubled his previous salary from Weatherford. Despite his increased responsibilities and work hours, Craig mistakenly believed he had successfully removed Sonny from his wife's life. However, Karen and Sonny continued to communicate regularly through calls, texts, and secret meetings. They would meet halfway, spend a couple of hours in a roadside hotel, and then return home. At this point, Karen realized her marriage was over. She no longer loved Craig, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These clandestine meetings persisted until December 2008. At the New Year's Eve celebration that year, the Kaler family went back to their hometown to reconnect with relatives and friends. Sonny was also in attendance at the gathering. Initially, Karen and Sonny kept a low profile, merely exchanging greetings. As the celebration continues and the alcohol slowly affects Karen and Sonny's behavior, they seem to have no regard for social norms. They became inseparable, openly showing affection by holding hands, sharing romantic glances. They even kissed. Craig's anger boiled over into fury after Karen publicly humiliated him by revealing her affair at a party attended by dozens of acquaintances. He lashed out at Karen and Sonny before dragging Karen away from the party. In his rage, Craig lost control and physically assaulted Karen, ripping her dress and slapping her, causing her to fall and hit her head. The incident marked the beginning of the end of their marriage. A few days later, Karen announced she was leaving Craig and initiated divorce proceedings, seeking custody of their children. Initially, Craig attempted to apologize and salvage their relationship for the sake of the children. But Karen was resolute. She said they should divorce, causing Craig to contact friends and family, begging them to convince Karen to reconsider. In the spring of 2009, Craig and Karen's marriage continued to deteriorate. Despite Craig's attempts to salvage their relationship, Karen made it clear she was leaving him for Sonny and she had never been truly happy in their marriage. The tension between them escalated into physical violence, with Craig grabbing Karen during an argument, leaving bruises on her arms. Karen reported the incident to the police, leading to Craig's arrest. After the incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for the divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated by her departure and even more so when he discovered that his daughters, Emily and Lauren, were siding with their mother. They told him that they had never seen their mother so happy, which Craig perceived as a betrayal. As a result, he cut off contact with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Despite the ongoing divorce proceedings, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His desire to control her led him to engage in jealous behavior, including stalking her and attempting to install a hidden camera in her home. To pursue this, Craig sacrificed his work, initially taking vacation time, then claiming illness, and eventually skipping work altogether without explanation. This reckless behavior resulted in Craig's termination from his job. Without a steady income, he was forced to move in with his parents as he could no longer afford to live on his own. With ample free time, Craig began stalking Karen, prompting her to take him to court to obtain a restraining order. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit their 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame police received a distress call about a suspicious van and reports of gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported witnessing a small truck pull up to her house. A man exit the vehicle and enter the house. They claimed to have heard screams and gunshots, but were uncertain. The man then left the house, got back into the truck, and sped away. The neighbors did not attempt to apprehend him, fearing he was armed. When police arrived, they were met by 10-year-old Sean Kaler, who was frantically calling for help. Although Sean was unable to explain what had happened, it was clear that a horrific scene awaited the police. Inside the home, near the front door, Sonny was found lying in a pool of blood but surprisingly still alive despite having 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered the lifeless body of 44-year-old Karen, who had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot at close range in the head. The body of her oldest daughter, 18-year-old Emily, was found between a wall and a couch. It appeared that Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was caught and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Lauren, found in a pool of blood in the second-floor bedroom. was still alive but weakly called for help and repeatedly said that her father was the one who did it. Dorothy and Lauren were rushed to a nearby hospital's intensive care unit. Despite the doctor's efforts, Lauren died on December 1st due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage. Her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. Sean, the only surviving witness, was in shock. Psychologists worked with him, but a thorough interrogation was necessary as he was the only living witness to the tragic events at his great-grandmother's house. Sean recounted that evening, stating that his mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner when he approached her to ask for his favorite pie. Suddenly, the back door swung open, and his father entered with a shotgun, pointing it at Karen without a word. He shot her, then moved closer and fired again. Sean was initially frozen in horror. His father then turned to Sean but didn't aim the gun. Instead, Craig stared at Sean silently and intently. Sean realized he had to escape. So he jumped out the open back door. He ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and call for help. However, upon reaching the threshold, he heard several more gunshots. Fearing what he might find inside, Sean hid in a small outbuilding. He heard more gunshots and waited in terror, afraid that his father would come after him. Craig Kaler was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. As police received multiple reports of a speeding truck, they were able to quickly determine the direction the gunman was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement soon caught up with him and apprehended him the next morning. Upon arrest, police found the rifle and ammunition in the back seat of the abandoned vehicle, along with prescription medication for depression and anxiety disorders near the driver's seat. Craig did not resist arrest and appeared confused and frightened. He admitted to being armed with a gun and a hunting knife, but claimed he did not intend to use them. He also acknowledged that he had done something terrible, which he believed the police already knew about. At the police station, Craig fully confessed to his crimes and opened up to the investigating officer. He shared how his wife had cheated on him with someone named Sonny and how they had humiliated him in front of friends at a New Year's Eve party. He explained how his attempts to save his marriage had cost him his job and what was left of his self-respect. Craig became emotional, stating that he didn't know how he had decided to take such drastic action and felt that everyone, including his daughters, had betrayed him. Craig's trial started in December 2010. Craig, advised by his lawyer Thomas Heaney, retracted his initial confession. He claimed his actions were due to mental illness and insanity, which was his only defense to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig was in a fragile mental state following a series of personal setbacks. His wife had left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back in with his parents. According to Heaney, these factors led to a breakdown, and Craig committed the crime while insane, without realizing what he was doing. However, the prosecution found no evidence of insanity or an altered mental state in Craig's actions. They argued that his actions were calculated, as he had purchased guns and ammunition in advance and went to the victim's house knowing his family was there. He shot each victim twice, ensuring no chance of survival, but intentionally spared his son Sean, allowing him to escape. In August 2011, Craig was found guilty on all counts and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating that he didn't want his father to die, as he was his only remaining close relative. Despite multiple appeals by Craig and his lawyers, the verdict has remained unchanged. As of today, Craig is still in prison, fighting to have the case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. After the death of his mother and sisters, Sean moved in with his grandmother. Now Sean has grown up and he has completed his studies and chosen to stay and work in his hometown. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Summer Baldwin. Summer Baldwin is a young girl born in 1976 in Washington. She is known for her friendly, kind and open personality. A good student with many friends, Summer dreams of becoming an actress after graduating from high school. However, that dream did not come true. After enrolling in community college, Summer had difficulty in studying at university. At the invitation of her friends, she decided to move to Lubbock, Texas, to change her life and seek new opportunities. Summer's life began to decline. She gradually became addicted to alcohol and illegal drugs without seeking help from her family. Her addiction got worse over time, leading to her losing her job and associating with people with criminal records. Her dream of becoming an actress was shattered. She eventually had to work as a prostitute to support herself. Meanwhile, Summer's parents, unaware of their daughter's problems and believing she was living a successful life, were devastated when they received news of her tragic death in September 2005. There is little information about Summer's friends or where she frequented. However, there is one important piece of information to note. Just a few months before her death, Summer was a key witness in a major federal counterfeiting case. This suggests that her murder may have been gang-related and possibly premeditated. This attracted the attention of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, which placed the investigation under close scrutiny. The police began their investigation and summoned the first suspects. The police first summoned Rebecca, Summer Baldwin's best friend, for questioning. Rebecca shed some light on Summer's work and revealed some information about Summer's boyfriends. One of them was aggressive when he tried to hold her hand, and kept following her even after they broke up, so that man became the main suspect in the case. However, the police arrested this man and brought him to the police station. But he completely denied his involvement in the case. He seemed genuinely surprised and saddened by the news of Summer's death. Moreover, he had a solid alibi for the night before the tragedy. He had been involved in a bar fight because he was drunk and had to spend the night in a cell with another prisoner. Therefore, the police had to release him. Marguerite, another friend of Summer's, provided vital information to the investigation. She met Summer the night before the murder and they had a conversation. They met on September 11th in the parking lot of a convenience store. A red van pulled up to the store, and a young man of Latino appearance got out of the van and entered the store. At that point, Summer got out of the passenger seat and greeted Marguerite. She told Marguerite that the man was a customer of hers, and that it was the second time she had seen him recently. After the man exited the store, he got into the driver's seat, and Summer got back into the van. Marguerite did not remember which direction the van went, nor where the couple was headed for their date. She also said she had never seen the man before and assumed he was not local. The man had very short hair, like a soldier, but Marguerite couldn't see him clearly because it was dark. Police later discovered a suitcase that was covered in trash and feces, but the contents were intact and new. The label and plastic attachments were still intact, indicating that the person who purchased the suitcase had not removed it. Police investigated and discovered that the suitcase was a large model and was only sold at 2 stores in the city. Police determined that a pair of identical suitcases had been sold the day before the murder at a Walmart store in the area of the city where Summer was last seen. The suitcases were purchased at 2 different times, the first in the afternoon and the second around 2 a.m. This discrepancy in purchase times struck police as odd and suspicious. Police went to the store and requested to review surveillance camera footage. After reviewing the documents, they discovered that the first suitcase had been purchased by an elderly couple. The couple did not arouse suspicion and explained that they had bought it for a vacation. However, the second suitcase was purchased by a young man who appeared to be Latino, had a slim build and very short hair, and looked like a military man. This led the police to suspect that this was the man the witness had mentioned when he saw him with Summer in the supermarket parking lot. This man also bought a pair of disposable gloves. The coincidence was so great that the police believed they had found the right person. This man was very careful to use cash to make payments instead of a card, in order to eliminate any personal traces. However, he did not anticipate that there would be cameras that would detect him. These cameras accurately recorded his license plate number. The police quickly identified the owner of the car as Rosendo Rodriguez, a reservist in the United States Marine Corps. He had been in town for several days with his unit for training. Finding Rodriguez immediately proved difficult, as he had not been at the hotel where his unit was stationed. However, police had his details and discovered that he had withdrawn a large sum of money from an ATM at another hotel, which may have been used to pay for the suitcase and gloves. Rodriguez had not stayed at the hotel where he used the ATM. Instead, a man named Thomas Rodriguez had checked in on September 11th. It turned out to be the same man, but using a different name for reasons unknown. The hotel room Rodriguez had rented, from which he had checked out, had not been cleaned, yielding crucial evidence. There were brown stains and splatters on the carpet, bed, and walls that looked like dried blood. A card from a new suitcase was found near the bed, and a trash bin contained used birth control pills and disposable gloves. Forensic analysis confirmed that the dried blood in the room belonged to Summer, and the DNA on the birth control pills and gloves matched both Summer and Rodriguez. There was no doubt that they had found the killer, but Rodriguez had left town by then. However, with all the information they needed, tracking him down was easy. Rosendo Rodriguez III was born on March 26, 1980, in Wichita Falls, Texas, to a poor Mexican immigrant family. Reports indicate that he experienced violence and harsh treatment as a child. His father, described as domineering and aggressive, struggled with alcoholism and was often abusive to his wife and children. Throughout his childhood, Rodriguez showed an aggressive nature, often getting into fights at school. However, as he grew older, he learned to control his anger. After graduating from high school, he attended Texas Tech University and moved away from his parents, living on his own. He held a variety of jobs before deciding to serve in the U.S. Marine Corps, including working at a pizza parlor, as a mail carrier, and as an office worker. His military colleagues described Rodriguez as quiet, disciplined, and responsible. He was considered a trustworthy friend, always willing to help others, and had a solid academic background. He was also attractive, which made him attractive to women. Rodriguez was arrested on September 15 at his home in San Antonio. When police arrived, he remained calm and appeared unaware of the seriousness of the situation. During the search, a striped shirt and shorts were found, matching the outfit he was wearing when he purchased the suitcase, which was captured on surveillance video. His laptop and cell phone were also confiscated. During the first weeks, Rodriguez remained silent and denied any involvement in the murder of Summer Baldwin. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, so, on the advice of his lawyer, he began to tell his version of the story, which differed greatly from the scenario set up by forensic experts. Initially, Rodriguez explained that he had accidentally checked into a different hotel than his teammates. He only knew the name of the hotel chain where they would be staying. And after checking in, he realized that the others were staying in a different location. He decided not to move because the military leadership said it was unnecessary. However, he did not explain why he checked into a room under a different name. On the morning of September 10th, Rodriguez rented a van to make it easier to move. That evening, while walking around the city, he said he ran into Summer Baldwin. According to his account, he saw a blonde woman sitting on a bench by the side of the road, covering her face with her hands as if she were crying. Curious and concerned, he stopped to check if she was okay and needed help. They began chatting, she calmed down, and then they went to his hotel room, where they talked and had a few drinks. In his testimony, they were not intimate. The next morning, Rodriguez drove her home, but they agreed to meet in the evening. He picked her up at the same location around 9 p.m. and went to a supermarket where Summer met her friend Marjorie. They then returned to the hotel, where Rodriguez said there was consensual intimacy between them. However, Rodriguez later said that Summer became aggressive and demanded money, which surprised him because he did not realize he was seeing a prostitute. And Summer's demand for money made him feel threatened. He disarmed her and punched her in the face, causing her nose to bleed. Rodriguez claimed that he had no intention of harming Summer and that his actions were in self-defense. However, just a few minutes later, Summer collapsed on the bed, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. Rodriguez said that he tried to help her, but was unable to perform CPR due to the blood and foam on her face. After a minute, Summer stopped breathing and Rodriguez realized that she was dead. He became panicked and took several actions to cover up the incident. Rodriguez went to a nearby store, bought a suitcase and gloves, then returned to the hotel, put Summer's body in the suitcase and threw it in the trash. He knew that the suitcase would be taken to the landfill the next morning. Rodriguez then checked out of the hotel, returned the rental car and drove home to San Antonio, trying to pretend that nothing had happened. However, investigators found several inconsistencies in Rodriguez's testimony that suggested he had lied. One of the key pieces of evidence was the testimony of Marjorie, who met Summer in the parking lot on the night of the murder. Marjorie claimed that Summer made it clear to her that the man was her client, with whom they had previously had a paid encounter. Rodriguez claimed that everything between them was consensual, but evidence on Summer's body suggested that she had been taken advantage of. It is possible that their first night together was consensual, which is why Summer agreed to meet Rodriguez again. However, Rodriguez's testimony that he only hit Summer once in the face to calm her down does not appear to be true. The autopsy revealed approximately 30 new bruises on Summer's head and body on the night of the murder, along with several stab wounds. This suggests that Rodriguez used violence against Summer. Additionally, the fact that Summer was still alive when Rodriguez stuffed her into the suitcase contradicts his testimony that she was dead. Another notable point is that during the investigation at Rodriguez's home, police seized his laptop. When they reviewed his search history, they discovered that Rodriguez had been actively searching for information about Summer, whether the police were looking for her, and whether her body had been found in a dumpster. It is worth noting that Rodriguez also frequently searched for information about Joanna Catherine Rogers, a 16-year-old girl from Lubbock who had gone missing a year and a half earlier. When authorities offered Rodriguez a plea deal in exchange for information about Joanna's fate, he reluctantly accepted and told his story. He said he met Joanna, a high school student in Lubbock, in late April 2004. After several meetings, they went to his hotel room on May 4th. An argument over money ensued, along with threats of a rape lawsuit. Meanwhile, Rodriguez gagged Joanna to keep her quiet, but this action inadvertently caused her death. He then put the body in his suitcase and threw it in the trash to dispose of it. Rodriguez initially confessed to these actions but later recanted, claiming he was coerced. To strengthen the case, the police conducted a large search of the city's landfill in search of Joanna's body. More than a year later, they found a suitcase containing Joanna's body. Although the body was badly decomposed, DNA testing confirmed the identity of the body. The evidence gathered allowed the authorities to charge Rodriguez as a serial killer with heinous crimes and a consistent modus operandi. The trial, sentencing, and execution followed. Despite the overwhelming evidence of guilt and the severity of the case, Rodriguez continued to hope to avoid the death penalty until the very end. However, the court made a different decision due to newly discovered information. The victim, Summer Baldwin, was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death. This aggravating factor led to the court finding Rodriguez guilty of first-degree murder and sentencing him to death by lethal injection. Rodriguez and his attorney appealed several times, but were all rejected. On March 27, 2018, nearly 10 years after his conviction, Rosendo Rodriguez was executed at the Huntsville prison in Texas. It was the fourth execution in Texas and the seventh in the United States in 2018. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Graciela Garcia. Graciela Garcia was born on October 6, 1971, in Mexico. Her family was working class and they hoped to provide a better future for their children. As a result, her parents decided to move to the United States and eventually settled in Hermiston, Oregon. Graciela was too young to remember the hardships of the move. She attended Umatilla High School, a low-cost school where 66% of the student body was Hispanic. Graciela made friends easily and stood out with her outgoing. She later studied business at Blue Mountain College. However, since she was young, she has had a passion for hairdressing and has had the goal of owning her own hair salon. With passion and hard work, Graciela believed that her plans could come true with the right approach. By February 2006, she had become the owner of Carr's Beauty Salon. Thanks to her talent and charisma, she quickly became famous in society. Moreover, her professional image also contributed to the prestige of the salon. She is passionate about her work and has a deep understanding of new beauty trends. Thanks to that, she always has a loyal customer base. Some of her customers have become close friends and are often invited to her home. She is respected and loved by everyone in town. Her private life is also filled with joy and happiness. She was pursued by many men when she was young, but she only loved one. That man became her first love. They have two beautiful daughters, Annabelle and Gabriella, often called Gabby. However, that love did not last long. The man left the family. It seems that his feelings for her faded over time. Despite becoming a single mother, she did not feel hopeless. Instead, she focused on self-improvement and pursued a degree in cosmetology. After her divorce, Graciela met Romero Sanchez, a regular customer at the beauty salon where she worked. At first, their relationship was just a friendship. However, Romero later asked Graciela out. And she accepted. Gradually, their relationship became closer and deeper. However, when Graciela introduced Romero to her family, they felt uncomfortable because of his cold and distant attitude. Annabelle and Gabby, Graciela's two daughters, tried many times to connect with Romero, but he did not respond. Graciela's children were confused by such behavior, but they attributed it to personality differences. Graciela's partner seemed to be a strange and unapproachable person, which puzzled the people around her. They could not believe that a woman as full of life and fun as her could be so passionately in love with such a dry person. However, they still respected her decision. When Graciela announced her upcoming marriage, everyone showed their support and shared her joy. Especially Annabelle and Gabby, they wanted to see her happy and loved. On the wedding day, guests also noticed Romero's arrogance and conceit. Some thought he seemed too jealous when trying to steal all the bride's attention. When Graciela's young grandchildren came to congratulate the newlyweds, Romero treated them with contempt, making them feel uncomfortable. Afterwards, Graciela's relatives could not hide their true feelings about this man. Annabelle even openly stated that she did not consider him a stepfather and just wanted to maintain a normal relationship like other families. After the wedding, the Graciela family had two more sons, Arthur and Jacob. They moved in together at Graciela's house. Graciela's youngest son, Jacob, noticed that Romero began to act as if he were the sole owner of the house. Initially, Graciela tried to set personal boundaries, but because she did not like confrontation, she quickly gave in to Romero. He was hot-tempered and never gave in or apologized first. To avoid creating tension in the family, Graciela continued to give in to Romero. However, over time, Graciela began to realize that she had rushed into this marriage. In conversations with her relatives, Graciela confessed that she felt constrained and oppressed. Her husband controlled her and did not let her go anywhere alone. Despite this, Graciela never said she wanted to leave this abusive relationship. It seems she still loves him. Graciela's family gradually realized that she had become attached to the wrong man. Romero not only controlled Graciela but also lived off of his wife, much to her family's dismay. Romero was a skilled manipulator, constantly stalking Graciela, controlling her correspondence, and even threatening to break up the friendship between Graciela and her friends. He did not want to let her go anywhere, or sometimes he would show up unexpectedly, as if testing her loyalty. His jealousy became excessive and uncontrollable. She felt ashamed and self-conscious because of his behavior, and as a result, she limited her social life. She only communicated with her family and no longer connected with friends or colleagues as before. This seriously affected her work, as her profession required her to communicate regularly with clients and attend various events. Her friends and colleagues noticed a change in Graciela. She was no longer the cheerful and bright woman she used to be. She looked sad and tired, and she was clearly unhappy. Her children also noticed that she had changed in both her mood and appearance. They saw that she had lost her independence and confidence. After discussing it with each other, Graciela's family agreed that they did not like Romero. However, since he was Graciela's choice, there was not much they could do to change the situation. They could only respect her decision. Other relatives also expressed doubts about Romero, but no one knew how to help her in this situation. Graciela and Romero needed help with their relationship, and Gabby had mentioned this to her mother. However, Graciela believed that she would manage her personal life on her own. In 2018, Graciela decided to move her salon to her home for convenience. However, her family was skeptical as they had not heard about the plan for 12 years. Some customers commented that Romero's constant presence at the salon made them feel uncomfortable. Some people thought that Graciela moved the salon home to solve the problem, but others doubted that the idea came from Romero. However, Graciela was happy about the change and believed that working from home would bring her closer to Jacob and Romero. At the end of the year, she and her husband renovated a room into a beauty salon, completing it in May 2019. The salon closed shortly after, but Graciela's reputation remained intact, and rumors of her reopening attracted many customers, including new ones. Graciela was delighted with her career success, but became increasingly secretive about her personal life. However, after 17 years of marriage, Graciela and Romero decided to separate. Romero always kept in touch with their children and saw them regularly. Graciela and her ex-husband shared custody of their youngest son, while the other children were grown and living on their own, but they still kept in regular contact with their family and participated in family activities. Graciela went through the divorce with a calm and optimistic attitude. After the divorce, Graciela focused on developing her beauty salon and spent her free time taking care of her family and close friends. On the morning of November 9, 2019, Romero visited Graciela's eldest daughter, Annabelle, and reported Graciela missing. According to Romero, Graciela and he had been together the night before. However, when he woke up the next morning, he was surprised to find that she was no longer there. Romero tried to contact Graciela but received no response. Annabelle was shocked by the news and Romero's reaction. He cried and appeared distressed. This made Annabelle feel strange because Romero usually did not show emotions in front of them. Romero also said that Graciela had been acting strangely recently, even hinting that she might have found another man in her life. Annabelle felt that Romero's words were insincere and his tears seemed fake, which made her start to doubt his behavior and worry about her mother. Romero usually avoided communicating with his wife's children. But after a while, he changed and decided to connect with them. After Romero left, Annabelle decided to inform the rest of the family about what had happened. Graciella's family gathers to find out what's happening to her. Graciella's car was parked in the driveway. If she decided to leave Romero, she would definitely use her own car. Another thing that surprised them was the neatness of Graciella's house. Everything was perfectly arranged and in order, far beyond normal. However, this was completely contrary to Graciella's personality and lifestyle, because if she went somewhere, her belongings and accessories would be scattered all over the room. Normally, Graciella would spend a lot of time in front of the mirror choosing her outfit for the day. However, the fact that she went out without any jewelry worried the whole family, and they wondered why. As she walked around the house, Gabby noticed something strange. The large blanket had been put in the washing machine, something her mother never did. The blanket was too heavy and someone else had washed it, apparently Romero, which made Gabby suspicious. Romero did not explain this, saying that he did not pay attention to such details. But then people realized that several important items were missing from the house, including Graciella's passport, driver's license, and cell phone. This raised further suspicions about Romero's actions. On November 11th, Annabelle contacted law enforcement at the police station and discovered something surprising. Although Romero had known about his wife's disappearance since the 9th or possibly earlier, he had not notified the police. Therefore, Annabelle was the first to file a missing persons report to her mother. Another incident raised concerns about Graciella's safety. She asked Gabby to pick her up, but even though Gabby said it would take some time because of the distance, Graciella continued to ask. Gabby was surprised by this unexpected request for help. Graciella explained that everything was fine and that her request was just a result of an argument with Romero. When they met, Graciella appeared relaxed, smiling and asking her daughter not to worry. She believed that arguments between lovers were just a form of renewal in their relationship. However, after they broke up, Gabby remained uneasy and became increasingly worried about her mother. The investigation began after Annabelle contacted the police. This caused the relationship between Graciella's family and Romero to deteriorate. Romero seemed angry that Graciella's family had notified law enforcement about her disappearance. Romero gave an official statement about his wife's disappearance. He said that Graciella either wanted to be alone or that she had moved in with another man and would be back soon. That was his answer every time someone asked. However, the police did not ignore this report. Officers launched an investigation into the missing Graciella's disappearance, considering the possibility that she may have been a victim of a crime. They started by searching her house, where her relatives reported that only a few personal items were missing, without finding any other suspicious signs. The investigation expanded to include interviews with her children, Romero, and other close family members, including her ex-husband. However, no useful information was gathered from these interviews. While everyone expressed doubts about Romero's behavior, he cooperated fully with the detectives, allowing them to search his home, answering questions, providing his DNA, and taking a polygraph test. Despite this cooperation, there was insufficient evidence to prove his involvement in the case. Further investigation revealed that Graciella's phone last sent a signal near a bridge in Washington on November 9th at 12:30 p.m. After that, her phone was turned off. Her bank accounts and social media accounts showed no activity, suggesting that she had not accessed since her disappearance. Hundreds of witnesses were questioned, and all the places she regularly visited were checked, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. The investigators found her disappearance to be highly suspicious, as it seemed she had vanished without leaving any clues. For months into the investigation, the Hermiston Police Department announced that they had found no reliable information about Graciella's last whereabouts. Although Romero had not reported her missing, he was not accused of any wrongdoing. Graciella's family became increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress despite their constant contact with authorities throughout the incident. However, as time passed, these updates became less frequent and eventually stopped, forcing Graciella's children to take initiative and contact the police station themselves to inquire about the status of the case. In an effort to reinvigorate the search, Graciella's family turned to the media in March 2020, seeking public assistance and attention. They hoped that by sharing their story, they might gather new information. Graciella's daughter Gabby was mainly in charge of communicating with the press. She expressed her family's increasing frustration with the lack of progress in the case and criticized the police for not keeping them informed for such a long time. She urged investigators to focus more on finding her mother, Graciella, and to take a closer look at the suspicious circumstances surrounding disappearance. Graciella's family suspected something was wrong, as the condition of her belongings was strange and unusual in her home. However, it was unclear who would want to harm her, as Graciella did not appear to have any enemies. The family also believed that Graciella would not have left on her own, as she would have contacted them to reassure. Posters and flyers describing Graciella were scattered throughout the city in search of clues to the case. Graciella, who is 49 years old, Latina, 1.6 meters tall, 62 kilograms, and with dyed blonde hair. Local residents were also asked to be vigilant and report any information that might help the investigation. Her children were so concerned that they asked for a new detective team to take over the case, as they suspected bias in collaboration with a suspect, Romero, who was acquainted with the original investigators. The Graciella family expressed concerns about several inconsistencies in the investigation, including the fact that Romero's phone was turned off on the day of Graciella's disappearance. Additionally, Romero's calm behavior raised suspicions, as it didn't with the typical reaction expected from someone whose loved one has suddenly gone missing. As a result, the Graciella family demanded that the suspect be arrested immediately. Police Chief Jason Edmiston responded to allegations surrounding Graciella's disappearance, confirming that her case is being treated as suspicious and possibly involving foul play. However, he emphasized that this is just one theory and that the investigation remains impartial, driven by evidence. Edmiston also dismissed claims of social connections between Romero and law enforcement as baseless. Edmiston noted that the spread of misinformation has hindered the investigation. Certain information must be kept confidential, and authorities have sought assistance from the FBI. The police chief expressed frustration over public criticism of the police's actions. Separately, Gabby organized a fundraiser to hire a private detective, a move seen as a critique of the police's handling of the investigation. This perceived criticism suggested that the police were not doing enough to find Graciella. 1 year after Graciella disappeared, her family organized a memorial gathering. Here, friends and people who knew her shared stories about her lively and cheerful personality. They prayed for her safe return, lit candles, and later placed signs outside the police station, urging authorities to continue the search for Graciella Garcia. In September 2023, a major development in the case occurred when Romero Sanchez was severely injured in an attack and that required surgery. There was speculation that the shooter was Mason Garcia, Graciella's brother. The attack suggests that Graciella's family had become frustrated with the lack of progress in the investigation and took matters into their own hands, potentially leading to further tragedy. The disappearance of Graciella Garcia remains an unsolved mystery, leaving her family in a state of agonizing. This has significantly affected the health and mental well-being of her family. Living without knowing what happened to a loved one can be more challenging than coping with a confirmed loss. It remains unknown whether Graciella is alive or not. Her children continue to hope that the truth will soon be revealed and justice will be served to the criminals. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Petit family. The Petit family was viewed as a model family due to their stable economic background and well-behaved children, earning them genuine admiration from those around them. William Petit, the father, was a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he demonstrated natural leadership skills. He was also the top student in his class, going on to earn a law degree from Dartmouth University. However, William's true passion lay in helping others, caring for the sick, and making a positive impact on the social. After completing his law degree, he decided to pursue a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. It was during his third year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh that William met Jennifer Hawk, a nurse specializing in oncology and co-director of the Health Center for a pre-graduate internship program. They fell deeply in love, with those who knew them confirming that they were perfectly suited for each other. The couple got married in 1985. 4 years later, they had their first daughter, Haley. Her birth inspired them to have a large family, which prompted them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. Following childbirth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and internship co-director. However, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic disease with no cure that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her family remained supportive throughout. At 10 years old, Haley started raising money for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, generating significant funds over time. Michaela also performed well academically. And when Haley went to college, Michaela planned to take over the fundraising efforts so she could continue supporting their community. The summer before, Michaela had learned to cook and she enjoyed preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this daily activity leads the family to an encounter with a criminal. One July evening in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner, but she needed additional ingredients. She and her mother went to the nearest market, where they coincidentally encountered Joshua Komisarjevsky, a man recently released from prison. Joshua had experienced a traumatic and complicated childhood. He was born to teenage parents. He was put up for adoption a week after birth and adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, renowned artists in Europe known for their strict and religious upbringing. Joshua had a high IQ, but struggled in school, prompting his parents to decide that homeschooling was a better option. During his trial, Joshua revealed that he had been sexually abused by a cousin in his childhood, but his family chose not to address the issue. This traumatic experience contributed to the development of his rebellious personality. At the age of 14, Joshua was accused of abusing his sister. Around the same time, he committed his first burglary. In 2002, he was arrested for 18 charges of burglary and resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he gave a chilling confession, revealing that he enjoyed invading other people's private space, enjoyed the feeling of being close to them while they slept, and found particular satisfaction in making others feel insecure. Released on parole in 2007 at the age of 27, officials deemed Joshua a danger to society, describing him as a perverted individual and disturbing behavior. Despite these warnings, the jury declared him fit for release. Following his release, Joshua stayed in a residence for ex-convicts, where he met his accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had spent a significant portion of his life in prison, starting with his first incarceration at the age of 16 in 1980. He was frequently arrested for violent robbery and burglary, and after being sentenced in 2004, he was granted parole in 2006, which led him to the same halfway house where he met Joshua. On July 22, 2007, Joshua trailed Michaela Petit and her mother as they traveled to a nearby market to purchase. He paid close attention to and noted specific details about Michaela's vehicle, facial features, and blonde hair. After completing their shopping, Michaela and her mother returned home, having no knowledge that Joshua had been following them. Later, Hayes sent Joshua a text message indicating he was impatient to start and needed a drink soon. Hayes asked if their plan was still on, to which Joshua confirmed to be yes. When Hayes asked how much longer he had to wait, Joshua told him he was busy putting his child to bed and advised Hayes to be patient. Hayes responded by expressing his eagerness to proceed. Meanwhile, Joshua secretly follows the Petit family in his car to find out the exact location of their house. The whole family was enjoying a nice dinner together, but they unaware that it would be the last time they would all be together. Later that night, while everyone was asleep except for William Petit, who had dozed off in the living room, their peace was disrupted by strange noises inside the house. William remembered feeling groggy, in pain, and unable to think clearly. Joshua and Hayes had entered the house through an unlocked door, initially planning to rob the family. However, upon finding a baseball bat, they used it to brutally beat William, who remained conscious despite the assault. One of the intruders threatened to shoot him if he moved. William was then restrained with ropes, tied to a pole in the basement. Joshua and Haley proceeded upstairs to Haley's room, where they found her sleeping. They tied Haley and Michaela to their bedposts, covering their heads with pillowcases. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Jennifer Petit had fallen asleep, but was soon woken up by Joshua and Hayes. They controlled Jennifer by tying her hands and feet, feeling that they now had control of the house. Joshua and Hayes then took their time to thoroughly inspect the house, and even stopped to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After collecting valuables such as jewelry, cash, Joshua and Hayes decided it was time to leave. It seemed the Petit family's ordeal was finally over as they heard the burglars leave the house. However, their nightmare was far from over. Joshua and Hayes sold the items at a pawn shop, but after realizing they hadn't made as much money as they expected, their greed drove them to return to the house. When they returned to the Petit house, they discovered a check register with $40,000 and decided to steal a total of $155,000. Once back, they informed Jennifer of their plan, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't comply. Desperate and prioritizing her daughter's safety, Jennifer reluctantly agreed to accompany Hayes to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence to enter Michaela's room. He untied Michaela, undressed her, and took photos with his cell phone. He assaulted her, recording the act. Afterward, Joshua took her to the bathroom to clean her, aiming to eliminate any DNA evidence. He ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The evidence that Joshua raped Michaela was found during her autopsy. State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver discovered Joshua's DNA in Michaela's body. At the bank, everything initially seemed to go smoothly. However, Hayes failed to notice Jennifer's actions while she was in line. Before approaching the teller, Jennifer wrote a note on a flyer asking for help. The note read that her name was Jennifer Petit, she needed to withdraw $115,000 from her savings account, and that her family was in danger, so Jennifer asked them to call the police, or her family would be killed. The teller gave Jennifer the money despite her lack of identification. With the cash, Jennifer left the bank and returned to the car with Hayes. The bank employee immediately called the police to report the incident. However, the manager told the 911 dispatcher that Jennifer had indicated the home invaders were being nice and only wanted money. Cheshire police received a report from the bank and they set up a vehicle perimeter around the area without alerting the suspect. From a distance, the police observed the situation without intervening. Meanwhile, back at the house, Joshua told his accomplice about his actions towards Michaela, implying that he could easily harm Jennifer as well. Hayes then grabbed Jennifer, pinned her to the ground, and started removing her clothes. William heard his wife being assaulted upstairs and managed to flee. One of the intruders responded, "Don't worry, it's all going to be over in a couple of minutes." William crawled to the basement stairs and eventually made it to the backyard. William thought the intruders would shoot them all soon, so he knew he had to act fast. Joshua checked on William but found he had escaped. According to Hayes' confession, Joshua told Hayes that William had gotten away while Hayes was raping Jennifer in the living room. Upon hearing this, Hayes strangled Jennifer to death while continuing to assault her. Shortly after, they heard William shouting for help. A neighbor, who initially didn't recognize William due to his injuries, immediately called 911. Realizing the police would arrive soon, Joshua and Hayes tried to eliminate evidence. Hayes and Joshua doused Jennifer's lifeless body, various parts of the house including Michaela and Haley's bedroom, and also Michaela and Haley themselves with gasoline. Hayes and Joshua started a fire at the scene, unaware that the police had blocked off the area just a few miles away. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle and were surrounded by officers. The two perpetrators, Joshua and Hayes, who were later identified as ex-convicts, were pulled from their vehicle and arrested. Meanwhile, the fire at the house was spreading rapidly. An ambulance arrived and took William Petit, was seriously injured, to the nearest hospital. Firefighters soon followed and attempted to put out the blaze. Once the fire was extinguished, they discovered a horrific scene inside the house. The first body they found was Jennifer's, which was badly charred and had rope around her ankles. On the second floor, they found Michaela tied to her bed, her body completely consumed by the fire. In a desperate bid to escape, Haley had managed to break free restraints but collapsed just a few meters away due to smoke inhalation. William had also managed to free himself and crawled to a neighbor's yard for help, but the neighbor didn't initially recognize him due to the severity of his injuries. Both Joshua and Hayes admitted to the murders during questioning. Detectives noticed that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout her interrogation. However, each attacker claimed the other was the main person responsible for planning the home invasion. Joshua also accused William of being responsible for the murders. In his diary, Joshua referred to William as a coward, stating that William had the opportunity to save his family but chose not to. The trial of Hayes started on September 13, 2010, with a jury of 12 people, consisting of 7 women and 5 men. The defense team argued that Joshua was the mastermind behind the crime and was responsible for making it more brutal. On the other hand, the prosecutors believed that both Hayes and Joshua were equally responsible. After about 5 hours of discussion, the jury found Hayes guilty on October 5. The sentencing phase began on October 18, but the jury was initially torn between recommending life imprisonment or the death penalty. Hayes' defense team argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. However, on November 8, the jury decided to recommend the death sentence for Hayes. Before the trial, Hayes had tried to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but the prosecutors wanted the death penalty. On December 2, 2010, Hayes apologized for the pain he caused the Petit family. He stated that death would be a welcome relief and hoped it would bring some peace to those he hurt. Judge John Blue sentenced Hayes to 6 death sentences and 106 additional years for other crimes. However, when Connecticut abolished capital punishment in 2015, Hayes' death sentence was changed to life imprisonment. The trial of Joshua Komisarjevsky began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. They argued that Hayes was the one who directed Joshua. Joshua was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During Joshua's sentencing, he expressed remorse and shame for the crime, claiming he never intended to kill anyone. The judge set an execution date of July 20, 2012, holding Joshua accountable for his actions. However, in August 2015, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after Connecticut abolished capital punishment. William Petit, the lone survivor of his family, was released from the hospital after 4 days. Upon his discharge, he immediately attended the funeral service for his wife and daughters. Overwhelmed with guilt and grief, William struggled to come to terms with the devastating reality that his loved ones were truly gone forever. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Timothy Jones Jr. As a child, Timothy witnessed hardships in his family. His mother suffered from schizophrenia, and her mental health gradually declined. Eventually, she had to leave home to receive constant care. When Timothy was 20, his father moved with him to his grandmother's house. There, Timothy faced domestic violence, substance abuse, and alcohol abuse. Despite his difficult upbringing, Timothy showed an aptitude for mathematics and computer engineering. He could solve problems easily and take apart and reassemble computers to make them run faster. However, things changed when Timothy reached his teens. At age 10, he began hearing voices in his head. By middle school, he was using drugs and drinking excessively. At age 15, he suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident that affected the frontal lobe of his brain, the area that controls impulses and is associated with mental illness. After the accident, Timothy exhibited unusual behavior and was very irritable. He felt jealous of his father and believed that anyone who had a relationship with him was causing his father to neglect him. Over time, Timothy believed that his father did not love him and feared being abandoned. Although his intelligence developed, his emotional development was affected, causing him to have a childlike mentality and lack of empathy. After graduating from high school, Timothy Jones Jr. dreamed of joining the United States Navy. His intelligence helped him to study there, but he lacked athletic ability and discipline. He lasted only a few weeks of training and often cried out of frustration. He had difficulty keeping up with the rigorous requirements, which led to depression and a drug test that revealed substance abuse, resulting in his expulsion. In 2000, Timothy began associating with people involved in bad activities. Police found him in possession of illegal narcotics and writing checks in his father's name. The police forced Timothy's father to control his son or face arrest himself. In 2001, Timothy Jones Jr. was sent to a work camp in an Illinois state prison for a year. When he was released, he seemed to have changed, with religion becoming the main driving force in his life. Timothy met Amber while they were both working at an amusement park in Chicago. After a while, in 2004, he invited her to his church. Within weeks, they decided to marry, in keeping with the church's expectation of immediate marriage. Amber was 19 and Timothy was 22. However, Amber soon learned about the strictness of the church. Women were not allowed to cut their hair, wear pants, wear makeup, or wear jewelry. Additionally, Timothy believed that women should submit to their husbands and bear children. Timothy was very religious and devoted to the church. Although many advised him not to take the Bible literally, he persisted. They soon had 3 children, Mara, Elias, and Nathan, each born a year apart. As their family grew, they moved to Mississippi. There, Timothy graduated with highest honors from State University, earning a degree in computer science and engineering. Timothy Jones Jr. was building a family while working multiple jobs, and his family was extremely proud of him. With a promising future, Tim was truly a talented man, and everything seemed to be going well for him. He had secured a job at Intel as a computer chip manufacturer, which his wife, Amber, saw as an opportunity for a better life. After living in student housing in Mississippi, they dreamed of a larger home to raise their 3 children and even considered hiring a nanny. However, things did not go as planned. Timothy bought an old mobile home on a dirt road in Red Bank because he dreamed of living on a farm. He purchased animals to raise, and Amber stayed home to care for them. By 2012, they had 2 more children, and problems began to arise. Timothy wanted Amber to homeschool the children, even though she only had a high school education. Amber felt lonely and isolated, with no family nearby and Timothy's family far away. She felt inferior to her intelligent and educated husband. The tension in Timothy and Amber's marriage increased when Timothy accused Amber of having an affair with a neighbor. Their marriage began to fall apart, and they started to consider divorce. Timothy did not want Amber involved in the children's lives, so he sought the help of a therapist and asked his divorce attorney to declare that he was capable of raising the children alone. Amber, without a lawyer and unsure of what to do, decided that it was best for the children to stay with their father. She felt she had nothing to provide for the children, as she had no job or education. Ultimately, the court decided that Timothy would have primary custody as the sole financial provider, and Amber would be granted regular visitation rights. After leaving her husband and children, Amber faced many difficulties. Meanwhile, Timothy began to lose control and suffer from his failed marriage. He started using drugs and alcohol again and struggled with the voices in his head. He became easily angered over small things. Amber recounted that Timothy once beat her in front of the children until she passed out. Unable to manage work and family, Timothy hired a nanny service to care for the children. The first 2 nannies found Timothy's house very clean and noted that he was dedicated and attentive to the children, but their attitudes changed when they learned about Timothy's condition. On the 3rd occasion, Timothy hired Crystal, a 17-year-old nanny who had a young daughter. Timothy gradually developed feelings for Crystal, and she soon became his lover. Timothy began to pressure Crystal to follow his religious customs, including wearing long dresses, growing her hair long, and being submissive to him. However, when Crystal refused, their relationship deteriorated. Crystal later spoke of how Timothy was too harsh with his children. He forced them to stand on their toes for hours, believing it was good for their weak bodies. Crystal eventually left after witnessing Timothy trying to hit her young daughter. After Crystal left, Timothy hired another nanny. The new nanny noticed a major change in Timothy's home. Once clean, the house was now littered with trash and dirty clothes, and there were even cockroaches. Over time, Timothy became increasingly violent and punished his children daily. He imposed a restricted diet, feeding them only oatmeal throughout the day and limiting them to 1 meal. In August 2014, the nanny contacted South Carolina Social Services to report conditions at Timothy's home. She described the lack of food and physical abuse the children were subjected to. In fact, the violence was so severe that teachers had reported it to the agency months earlier. The agency had previously required Timothy to sign a non-abuse pledge, but the children came to school with bruises and provided evidence linking them to the violence. On the afternoon of August 28, 2014, Timothy picked up the children. At the time, he was very angry about an electrical problem in the house. Timothy took his anger out on his 6-year-old son, Nathan, and repeatedly made Nathan bend down to pick up sand as punishment. Every time Nathan slowed down, Timothy hit him with a belt. While Nathan was being punished, Amber, Timothy's ex-wife, called to talk to the children. She made several calls until Timothy answered at 7:10. During the conversation, Nathan told his mother about the punishment for breaking the outlet, claiming it was an accident. Timothy angrily hung up, telling Amber to stop defending him. After hours of torture, Nathan was exhausted, dehydrated, and begged for it to stop. He passed out, ending it all. Timothy took Nathan to bed and left him without giving him water or help. Call records show that Amber called 8 more times after that. Around 1 a.m., Timothy took his 8-year-old daughter, Mara, to a convenience store to buy 10 packs of cigarettes. When he got home, he strangled Mara. Timothy then went to his 7-year-old son, Elias, and did the same thing. He then unbuckled his belt and strangled Gabriel, 2, and Elaine, 1, until they stopped breathing. When the children did not move, he took a blanket, wrapped each one in it, and placed them in the back seat of the car and drove away. The disappearance of Timothy and his children was reported to the police. The police searched everywhere for Timothy. Fortunately, a police officer stopped his car. As the police approached the car, they immediately detected a foul odor inside. They also noticed that the carpet appeared to have been recently cleaned with bleach. The sheriff asked the driver, Timothy, for identification and license plate number and observed that Timothy appeared to be under the influence of drugs. After checking Timothy's information, the police discovered that he was wanted in South Carolina for a child welfare issue. When asked about the whereabouts of his children, Timothy initially said he had no children, but later mentioned that he had 3 children living in South Carolina. The officers asked for Timothy's relatives' phone numbers to verify the children's safety. After making the call, they immediately arrested Timothy. As Timothy was placed in a patrol car, he became emotional and began telling officers what he had done to his children. He confessed to killing his 3 children for ulterior motives. Timothy explained that he felt very sad and angry when he saw one of his sons playing with an electrical outlet, so he strangled his son until he lost consciousness. Timothy did the same to his other son and his older daughter. He strangled his daughter until she turned blue. In another account, Timothy claimed that his son was trying to hurt him when he saw him playing with an electrical outlet, which prompted him to kill him. In one recording, investigators heard a discussion about Timothy Jones Jr. subjecting his 6-year-old son, Nathan, to hours of punishment. This was because Nathan had accidentally turned off an electrical outlet in the living room. Timothy said he put Nathan to bed afterwards, but when he checked on him, he found him dead. When asked why he did this, Timothy said he heard voices in his head and believed his children were plotting against him. He also thought his children would be happier if they went to heaven. So he decided to kill all of them. After killing his children, Timothy traveled throughout the southeast with the bodies of his 5 children covered in blankets in his car. He eventually dumped them in a remote wooded area in Alabama. In a second statement, Timothy said Nathan's punishment had gotten out of hand. When he went to Nathan's room, he found him dead. Not knowing what to do, Timothy decided to end the lives of all his children. After an autopsy, pathologists were unable to determine a definitive cause of death. However, they theorized that Nathan may have been too weak from the excessive punishment Timothy had imposed on him, making it easier to kill Nathan. Investigators questioned Timothy's actions, particularly why he did not call 911 immediately after the incident. Instead, he attempted to conceal and dispose of his children. Timothy later led investigators to where he had dumped the children's bodies that same day. The remains of the 5 children were found on September 10th. On September 11th, evidence from Timothy's car was collected and turned over to South Carolina authorities. Some of the evidence included family photos, children's clothing, children's drawings, letters from his mother to the children, Timothy's college diploma, and his passport. Notably, Timothy Jones Jr.'s handwritten notes included a list of actions related to the disposal of the bodies, such as moving the bodies, grinding the bones into powder or small pieces, burning the bodies, and preparing necessary items such as camping equipment, gas, and muriatic acid. On September 13, 2014, Jones was admitted to a correctional institution and placed in a special cell separate from the general population. Since then, he has been evaluated by mental health experts, including psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and forensic specialists. Opinions among these professionals varied. Some diagnosed him with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or a personality disorder. They suggested his mental state during the crime might have been worsened by drug use and a traumatic brain injury he sustained at age 15, which could have contributed to underlying psychosis. These theories were presented to the jury during his trial. Conversely, other specialists argued that Timothy was mentally competent and that his attempts to hide evidence, including his children, showed he knew his actions were morally and legally wrong. His internet search history indicated he understood what he was doing and how to do it. The prosecution argued that Timothy succumbed to the pressures of a failing marriage and the challenges of raising 5 young children. According to his statements, the catalyst for his actions was his wife's alleged infidelity with their neighbor, who is now her husband. She testified that she did not commit adultery and that her relationship with the neighbor began only after her divorce. The trial occurred in late May 2019, featuring weeks of intense testimonies and evidence against Timothy. The crime is considered one of the most horrific murders in South Carolina's history. Mara's last words to her father were, "Daddy, I love you." When police searched the house, they found Nathan's favorite Toy Story toy broken into pieces. Nathan appeared to have been the most severely punished. Nevertheless, all testimonies agreed on one thing: the children loved their father. On June 13, 2019, after 2 hours of deliberation, Timothy Jones Jr. was sentenced to death. He is currently in solitary confinement at a correctional institution, wearing a green jumpsuit that identifies him as a death row inmate. This tragic case ended the lives of innocent children because of marital issues, with both the father and mother making irreversible mistakes. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Rosana Galeano. Rosana Galeano was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the late 1970s to parents Raldo and Graciela. She had 2 older brothers, Oscar and Gustavo, and a sister, Monica. During this time, Raldo, Rosana's father, worked as a mechanic. In 2001, Jose Arce brought his vintage car to Raldo's workshop for repairs. Jose was born on November 22, 1948. He spent more than 30 years living abroad, primarily in Greece and the United States. During his time in the United States, Jose was convicted of drug trafficking and served a 4-year prison sentence. He returned to Argentina in 1996 and owned 8 properties in a prestigious area of Buenos Aires. Despite their significant age difference, Jose and Rosana began dating shortly after meeting at her father's shop. At the time, Rosana was without a job and kept to herself, while Jose appeared to be financially stable. However, his wealth actually came from his mother, Elsa, who lived in the United States. Jose, who is 52 years old, proposed to Rosana, who is 22 years old. Rosana's mother, Graciela, expressed concerns about their significant age difference. Jose dismissed her worries, claiming that love knows no age. Rosana reassured her mother that she wanted to marry Jose, and they tied the knot on November 17, 2001, after a 7-month courtship. Jose initially thought his friendly and intelligent personality was the reason Rosana was attracted to him. They soon had a son, Geronimo. However, Jose's true nature soon became apparent, a controlling and jealous person. He frequently belittled Rosana and her family, and has eventually turned physically abusive, leaving Rosana feeling trapped and fearful. Jose's ownership of 2 guns added to his intimidating presence, allowing him to maintain control over Rosana. Her family was aware of the situation and the pain it caused. Jose often flaunted his guns in front of visitors or when visiting others. On one occasion, Rosana's brother Oscar witnessed Jose physically assaulting her while they were painting their house. On another occasion, Rosana's father observed bruises on her back, bruises that she explained were caused by Jose dragging her on the ground. Rosana and Jose had their second child, but their relationship continued to deteriorate. Jose's hot temper and lack of respect have repeatedly strained their relationship, making it difficult for her to maintain a healthy home for her children despite her best efforts. The situation was further complicated by Jose's mother, Elsa, who would visit from time to time and exert control over their household decisions. By 2006, Rosana had suffered severe abuse at the hands of Jose and decided to report him to the authorities for domestic violence. A few months later, Rosana filed a second complaint, this time she requesting a medical examination to document her injuries. Rosana opened up to her sister Monica about her struggles, and they made a promise to stay connected and be there for each other whenever Rosana needed assistance. Monica becomes Rosana's rock, comforting and supporting her emotionally during difficult times. Whenever Rosana visited Monica's apartment with her children, Jose would often dictate when they had to return home, threatening to harm her. He frequently belittled Rosana, questioning her ability to be a mother. Ultimately, Rosana decided to leave Jose and move in with Monica, leaving him to stay in their house alone. Rosana filed another complaint and sought a divorce, which led to a restraining order being issued against Jose. As a result, they were only allowed to meet at a neutral location in El Remanso Exil de la Cruz, as arranged by the court, for Jose to visit their child. During one of her visits, Rosana confided in Daniel Gonzalez, a married man, who worked as a gardener and lived nearby with his own daughter. Although there were rumors about a relationship between Rosana and Daniel, this was never confirmed. Meanwhile, Jose continued to make threats against Rosana, including a disturbing voicemail, in which Jose explicitly threatened to kill her, and she shared this message with her brother Oscar. In 2007, Rosana met Oscar Lugo at a bar while socializing with friends. He was 32 years old, lived in Marino, and worked in a sewing workshop. They quickly connected, exchanged numbers, and began dating. Oscar was a kind, attentive, and gentleman who listened to Rosana. At 29 years old, Rosana felt like she was rediscovering a life she had almost forgotten. However, their budding relationship was soon threatened by Rosana's ex-husband, Jose. He closely monitored Rosana's activities and was aware of her new relationship with Oscar. Jose wants to prevent his divorce from Rosana and is terrified when he hears that Rosana has started a new relationship. He offers give Rosana a truck in exchange for ending her relationship with Oscar Lugo, but she refuses. When Rosana had a severe nervous breakdown, it was Oscar who accompanied her to the hospital. Out of desperation, Jose devised a plan with the help of his mother Elsa. They secretly planned to hire an assassin to kill Rosana. On January 16, 2008, Rosana and her sister Monica went to El Reno to pick up Rosana's two sons, aged 4 and 3, from their father Jose. However, Jose delayed the handover, making excuses. At 9:15 p.m., Jose called Rosana, claiming their son Geronimo had a fever and that he would take him to the hospital and return him the next day. Rosana insisted on taking care of Geronimo herself, but the call ended abruptly. Rosana then sent a casual text message to Oscar Lugo at 9:53 p.m. about their plans for the next day. At 10 p.m., Rosana and Monica sat down for dinner when Jose called again. This time, Rosana stepped out into the garden to get better phone reception. Unbeknownst to her, a person was hiding behind the trees. As she was on the phone, the person emerged and shot Rosana 4 times with a .45 caliber gun. Monica, who was inside, heard the shots and saw Rosana stumble and collapse. Panicked, Monica tried to call 911 but was unsuccessful. She then asked her boyfriend to alert the police. Meanwhile, Oscar Lugo tried to contact Rosana at 11 p.m. but couldn't reach her. He then tried to call Monica but got no response. The police investigation revealed that the shooter had entered the property through an adjacent vacant lot. A witness reported seeing someone fleeing through a gap in the fence but couldn't provide a clear description due to the darkness. Jose was questioned by the police and appeared shocked. After requesting a lawyer, he let the lawyer handle the proceedings and left the next day. During a thorough search of the area, a red sweater was discovered that Rosana's family believed belonged to Jose, which led them to suspect him of the crime. The case quickly gained widespread media attention, shocking the nation and sparking a scandal. Jose and his mother publicly maintained his innocence and criticized Rosana, claiming that she had multiple sexual partners and that they should be investigated for this crime instead of Jose. Following the incident, Daniel, the gardener, became withdrawn and isolated, refusing to speak to anyone. On the night of Rosana's funeral, Raldo noticed Jose watching from a distance in a truck, but he did not attend the funeral or offer any condolences. Jose's defense team then shifted their focus to Monica, who was Rosana's sister and the only witness to the case. They questioned Monica's credibility, pointing out two key inconsistencies in her story. Firstly, Monica did not have any blood on her clothes, which raised suspicions about her account of what happened. Secondly, instead of immediately helping her younger sister, Monica chose to run and get her phone. However, this theory lacked supporting evidence. The investigators presented a strong argument that the murder weapon was too heavy for a woman to handle. They also pointed out that the killer likely knew the house well, as they would have been aware that Rosana had to go outside to get a cell phone signal. This suggests that the crime was planned in advance. During the investigation, Rosana's sons were cared for by their father and paternal grandmother Elsa, and their grandmother Graciela was allowed to visit them. However, Monica and Oscar are not allowed near the children, as Jose expresses concern for his son's safety. Despite the court's restrictions, the children still wanted to see Aunt Monica, so Jose allowed them to visit her. During these visits, Monica took the children to see a psychologist. Eventually, Graciela was granted visitation rights to her grandchildren, though not guardianship. In an interview, Jose made some serious allegations about Rosana, claiming she had 4 lovers who all had run-ins with the law. Jose suspects Rosana of being involved with these men, and she has been gathering information about them for blackmail. Meanwhile, Oscar was given protection as a witness in his sister's case, which included wearing a tracking device and having a police escort. By the end of 2007, investigators still hadn't found enough evidence to charge any of the suspects. However, a significant turning point occurred in January 2008 when Jose was arrested and charged with aggravated homicide. This charge was based on 3 key factors: his connection to the victim, evidence that suggested he had planned the crime in advance, and the fact that multiple people were involved in the crime. On January 28, 2008, the preliminary hearings began. At the hearings, 4 people, including Raldo, Graciela, Monica, and Oscar, described Jose's disturbing behavior, including his repeated use of violence and weapons to threaten others. Rosana's mother also presented the prosecutor with the last text messages her daughter had sent before her death. The following day, Oscar Lugo, who used to date Rosana, testified against Jose, provided testimony similar to that of Rosana's family. According to Oscar Lugo, Jose had tried to ruin his and Rosana's reputations by spreading false rumors. Oscar Lugo said Rosana suspected Jose's fabrications were intended to discredit her as she and Jose were about to divorce. Opposite, Jose's lawyer disputed the claims that Jose was emotionally unstable and aggressive. On February 7, 2008, Jose's mother, Elsa, traveled from the United States to testify in a 12-hour investigative session. However, Rosana's family began to suspect that Jose's mother might have been involved in her murder. This suspicion led Raldo and Graciela's lawyer to consider requesting Jose's mother's arrest. In response, Jose and his mother's lawyer argued that her testimony actually showed she was prioritizing her grandchildren's well-being. According to Elsa's testimony, she purchased houses for them because she believed the divorce settlement would not negatively impact them. The lawyer also denied the media's claim that Jose's mother and Rosanna had a poor relationship. Despite ongoing speculation and media coverage surrounding the circumstances of Rosanna's death, Jose was released on bail and gained custody of his children. Meanwhile, the court deemed it unnecessary to provide police protection for Oscar, Rosanna's brother, who worked as a taxi driver. However, on July 5, 2008, Oscar was attacked by two armed men in the early morning. They beat and threatened him for an hour before abandoning him in a vacant lot. Fortunately, Oscar was found thanks to the protective witness tracking bracelet he wore. Oscar was deeply shaken by the event, though not severely injured. The trial next began in April 2013. Jose maintained his innocence throughout the proceedings. However, in May, the trial was delayed when Jose suffered a stroke, pushing the final verdict back to November 2013. The judge determined that the murder was carefully and deliberately planned, bearing the hallmarks of organized crime. The court concluded that Jose and Elsa were involved in planning the attack. They deliberately chose the time and place to put Rosanna in a passive position and unable to defend herself. Specifically, they targeting her after a phone call would lure her outside. The court ultimately determined that Jose's primary motive for the murder was financial, because he did not want to divide the joint property with Rosanna. As a result, Jose and Elsa were sentenced to life imprisonment. The higher court upheld the conviction, emphasizing Jose's threatening behavior, the domestic violence Rosanna suffered, and the significant influence his mother had over him. Years later, in 2015, Jose and Elsa were granted house arrest due to health and age concerns, respectively. This allowed them to be reunited with their children. Throughout this time, the media continued to follow the story of the children. In January 2017, the court allowed the children to spend a weekend with their maternal grandparents for the first time. The Rosanna Galliano family thoroughly prepared their home, repainting and cleaning the house, and decorating it with balloons and a welcome sign. Graciela also cooked the children's favorite meal in anticipation of their arrival. The Rosanna Galliano home was filled with joy that weekend, as the boys spent happy time together, playing soccer and video games, and even asked to sleep in their grandmother's bed, whom they hadn't seen in over 2 years. However, their happiness was short-lived. On November 24, 2018, Jose passed away after suffering another stroke. This was a devastating blow for the children. Aunt Monica reassured them with love and calmness, promising to support whatever decision they made. The boys decided to live with Aunt Monica. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Johnny Berry. Johnny Berry was born on August 26, 1983 in the small town of Bristol, Tennessee, USA. She is cheerful, friendly, has many friends, and often goes to parties. While in school, Johnny was a member of the local cheerleading squad. After graduating from high school, she studied psychology and criminology at East Tennessee State University. While in college, she met Jason White. They became a couple, and they got engaged before graduating in late 2004. When Johnny was 21, she decided to continue her studies to get a master's degree in psychology, so she temporarily moved to Knoxville. While studying, she worked part-time at a child education center and realized her passion for helping children. Her boyfriend, Jason, studied law in another state. Despite the distance, they kept in touch and planned their wedding. While in Knoxville, Johnny stayed at a classmate Jason Amami's apartment. They had attended college together and moved to Knoxville together. They shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and Johnny stayed until she found her own place. Johnny had 2 part-time jobs, one at a jewelry store and one at a children's hospital. On the evening of Sunday, December 5th, after working at the store, Johnny went to the mall to do some Christmas shopping. When she got home, she wrapped presents for the children at the daycare center, chatted with her neighbors, and then went to her room. Before going to sleep, she talked to her boyfriend. Around 4 a.m., Jason Amami heard Jania screaming. He thought Jania was having a nightmare, so he went into her room, but instead of Jania, Jason Amami saw a stranger holding a knife. The stranger attacked Jason Amami, and they struggled. He eventually pushed the attacker away and ran out of the apartment. He went to the nearest convenience store, about a mile away, to call for help. The store clerk found him covered in blood and called 911. The police arrived at Jason Amami and Jania's apartment and found Jania in the hallway connecting 5 apartments. She was still alive but barely conscious. When asked about her attacker, she gave only vague clues. The police searched the entire building and the surrounding area but could not find the attacker. They took Jania to the nearest hospital, but despite the doctor's best efforts, she died. The doctor said that Jania had suffered more than 20 stab wounds and that her chances of survival were slim. Meanwhile, Jason Amami had suffered 8 injuries from the attacker, but only one was serious. He was treated and his life was not in danger. At the same time, detectives began investigating the scene. They found blood in the hallway, indicating that Jania had tried to call for help from neighbors, but no one answered the door. Near Jania's room, they found the murder weapon, a kitchen knife owned by Jason Amami. The attacker used the knife with such force that it was bent and damaged. Police also found blood stains near the back door and on the stairs leading to the street. Since Jason Amami and Jania had left through the front door, detectives believe the killer escaped through the back door. In Jason Amami's room, they found another clue, partial footprints that the attacker may have left while stalking and attacking Jason Amami. Because of the brutality of Jania's death, police suspected a personal motive behind the crime. Initially, detectives investigated Jania's boyfriend, even though he lived about 1,000 miles away in Knoxville. However, all of his friends and family said that Jania and her boyfriend had a wonderful relationship and that he had no reason to commit such a brutal act. He learned of Jania's death when her mother called at 10 a.m. to tell him. He said he fainted when he heard the news and it took him a long time to regain consciousness. Unable to do anything, he asked his neighbors to help him book a plane ticket and prepare his luggage. Investigators looked closely at Jason White's alibi and realized that he could not have made it to Knoxville and back in the morning by himself. So they eliminated him as a suspect and turned their attention to Jania's neighbor. This neighbor did not have a solid alibi and had been in the apartment with Jania, raising suspicions that he could be the culprit. Jania's friends and family also suspected this neighbor. Some believed that he could be the killer, while others accused him of fleeing the apartment, leaving Jania behind. The suspicions were so deep that the victim's parents did not even want him to attend her funeral. However, after Jason Amami was discharged from the hospital, investigators began questioning him. He stuck to his original story. He heard screaming, saw a strange man, and was attacked by him. After fighting off the attacker, Jason Amami ran to the front door and onto the street, seeking help from neighbors. He believed that Jania had also escaped from the apartment because he could not hear her screams. However, police had doubts about Jason Amami's story. What initially raised suspicions about Jason Amami were his injuries. 7 of the 8 were superficial, and the last wound to his right arm could have been self-defense or the result of an attack. Additionally, investigators found no signs of forced entry into the apartment, suggesting that the perpetrator may have been someone Jania knew. Jason Amami claimed that he had taken out the trash through the back door that night but did not remember locking it. Detectives continued to press him, paying close attention to the door he used to exit the apartment onto the street. Jason Amami insisted that he had exited through the front door, but police suspected that he might be lying. If Jason Amami had indeed left through the front door, that would not have explained the presence of bloodstains near the back door, further raising suspicions against him. Police accused Jason Amami of using and selling illegal drugs, and of being aggressive when he could not satisfy his addiction. However, he denied all of these allegations. After hours of questioning at the police station, detectives suggested that Jason Amami take a polygraph test. Jason Amami agreed to take the test. The results showed that he gave false answers, which made detectives even more suspicious of him. However, detectives were still unable to charge him with murder due to a lack of concrete evidence. They had to wait for lab experts to complete testing on some of the evidence found in the apartment. They then discovered some key evidence, including 3 DNA samples on the murder knife, samples from Jania, Jason Amami, and an unidentified man. The unidentified man's DNA was also found in Jania's room, on the back door handle, and on the stairs the criminal used to escape to the street. They also found a fingerprint on the handle of the knife, but it did not match Jason Amami's fingerprint. These discoveries led the police to suspect that someone else had been in the apartment that night. However, when they ran the DNA sample against existing databases, they found no match. This complicated the case further, and detectives had to continue investigating to find the real killer. Investigators have ruled out Jason Amami as a suspect, but the public remains uncertain about his role in the incident. They believe that Jason Amami abandoned his friend and ran away instead of protecting her. However, it is worth noting that after the accident, Jason Amami began to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. A key finding was later revealed: the polygraph operator had misinterpreted the test results, and there was no indication that Jason Amami was lying. Additionally, there was no concrete evidence that Jason Amami was involved with illegal substances. They eventually concluded that this was used as leverage to frame him. More importantly, however, doctors initially underestimated the severity of Jason Amami's injuries. In fact, he had suffered severe damage to his lungs and neck, with little hope of a full recovery. Due to inaccurate information reported about Jason Amami's health, the insurance company only covered 25% of his medical expenses, leaving Jason Amami facing serious financial hardship. After eliminating Jason as a suspect, police began questioning him as a witness. Based on Jason's testimony, they attempted to create a rough description of the attacker. However, this was made more difficult by the fact that Jason could not see the attacker's face clearly. The apartment was too dark and the attacker lunged at him as soon as he entered the room. Investigators also discovered several suspicious items in the room, including a hat, a record player, and a stereo near the back stairs. At first, they thought these items might belong to Jania or Jason, but Jason denied owning them. This led them to suspect that these items might have been left behind by the killer. Police shared a rough sketch of the suspect with the media, and they subsequently received hundreds of calls from the public. Many people reported individuals who matched the sketch, prompting detectives to pursue each of these leads. One of the prominent clues led investigators to a group of teenagers who had broken into homes with the intention of burglarizing. One member of the group, a 19-year-old named Michael, matched the sketch of the suspect. The police began searching for Michael, but this was not easy because he was wanted for burglary. 2 police units joined the search for him, and they eventually found Michael. When interrogating Michael, investigators immediately noticed his shoes, which had a pattern similar to the footprints left by the killer. They collected Michael's DNA and fingerprints and sent them to experts for analysis. During the interrogation, Michael revealed a surprising piece of information: he and a friend had entered Jania's apartment that night. According to Michael, they planned to rob, but his friend attacked Jania with a knife. However, detectives soon discovered inconsistencies in Michael's story. The details he provided did not match the actual events, and there was no evidence of 2 strangers at the crime scene. Michael's DNA and fingerprints also did not match the evidence at the scene. Michael's shoes also did not match the tread pattern in Jason's room. Investigators concluded that Michael had made up the story. This is not uncommon, as some people may falsely confess to crimes in order to seek attention or reward. Michael's motives remained unclear, but his story was completely untrue. Police subsequently interviewed more than 1,000 potential suspects and collected about 400 DNA samples, but none of them matched the evidence at the scene. Early in the murder investigation, authorities offered a reward for information leading to a solution to the case. The reward grew each month, and by December 2005, it had reached $60,000. The governor then added another $20,000 to bring the case to the attention of the public. Despite many clues, all were dead ends, and the case remained unsolved for many years. In 2007, Jania's parents decided to take matters into their own hands by looking into changes in state law. They noticed that the killer's fingerprints and DNA did not appear in any databases, which raised suspicions about his brutality. They assumed that the killer had a criminal record, so they investigated Tennessee law. Through their investigation, they discovered that, according to Tennessee law, fingerprints and DNA samples could only be collected from convicted criminals. So Jania's parents expressed their desire to change this law. They played a key role in drafting a new law that required fingerprints and DNA samples to be collected from all people arrested for violent crimes. After gaining support from the government, the law was passed in May 2007. 2 months later, a breakthrough occurred. Police arrested 22-year-old Taylor Lee Olson for violating the terms of his probation. Olson had a criminal record, including theft, check forgery, and auto theft, and had been arrested several times. Surprisingly, however, police had never collected his fingerprints or DNA. Olson lived with his girlfriend and newborn daughter, but he continued to commit crimes. 5 months earlier, police had begun investigating Olson for his suspected involvement in the murder of Jania. However, they had not been able to analyze his DNA at the time. But after Olson was arrested for violating his probation, police decided to question him about the details of the Jania case. Olson eventually confessed to his role in the murder and voluntarily provided a DNA sample. The DNA test showed that Olson's sample matched the one found in the victim's apartment. Additionally, Olson's fingerprints matched the fingerprints on the murder weapon. Olson claimed that he intended to steal Jania's car that night and entered the apartment through the back door to look for the keys. When he entered Jania's room, she woke up and began screaming. In a panic, Olson grabbed a kitchen knife and attacked her multiple times. Olson insisted that he had no intention of killing anyone and that the incident was an unfortunate accident. Investigators were suspicious of some of the details and suspected that Taylor had planned to kill Jania in advance. They believed that he may have been following Jania for some time, which was supported by Jania's friends reporting that someone was following her in a car at the time. Although there was no concrete evidence to prove this became more credible after Olson was arrested. When Olson's trial was scheduled to begin in mid-2008, he hired an attorney. His attorney advised him to withdraw his original confession, and Olson gave a new account to investigators. According to this new account, Olson claimed that he had entered Jania's apartment with his friend, Noah Cox. When Olson entered Jania's room to get his car keys, Jania allegedly woke up, grabbed a knife, and stabbed Olson multiple times. Olson then fled through the back door while his friend entered Jania's room, disarmed Jania, and killed her. Taylor Olson's new story raised suspicions among police. They found no fingerprints or DNA of others at the crime scene, leading them to believe that no one else was involved. Detectives waited for the trial to begin, but it never did. On March 28, 2008, Taylor Olson committed suicide in his jail cell. Along with him, detectives found several suicide notes addressed to his family, Johnny's relatives, and the police. In the letter to detectives, he accused his friend Noah Cox of being the real culprit and apologized to Johnny's family and his family. However, detectives still believed that Olson was responsible for the murders. They questioned Noah several times but found no evidence implicating him. Johnny's parents were also skeptical of Olson's final confession. They felt that if Olson was truly innocent, he would not have committed suicide. Olson had consistently maintained that he had entered the apartment alone for months after his initial confession. His sudden change in story to blame his friend raised further suspicions. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jordan Worth. Alex Skeel was born on August 17, 1995 in Kingston upon Hull, into a warm and wealthy family. Alex Skeel also has a twin brother. The twins' health was not good when they were young because they were born prematurely. Despite these health challenges, Alex's intellectual development was not affected, and he was just like his peers. He was even able to actively participate in school sports. From a young age, his parents showered both sons with love and care, investing heavily in their education to give them a better life. After completing high school, both brothers enrolled at the prestigious Bedford College, where they continued their studies. Alex is smart, physically attractive, and healthy thanks to his regular visits to the gym. He is quite shy, so he is hesitant to ask women out. In college, Alex met Jordan Worth, a young woman from a wealthy family. Jordan was very popular at college because of her fashion sense. At that time, many boys wanted to compete for her attention. Jordan also spends time volunteering, focusing on fundraising, organizing aid for local animal shelters, and helping children in Africa facing famine. Her charitable efforts are contributions to a better world. Alex Skeel fell for Jordan immediately, drawn to her kindness, intelligence, and beauty. Although he thought someone so famous and talented would never notice him, Alex was surprised when Jordan took the initiative to get to know him. They began dating in 2012, when they were both 17. Jordan and Alex, they were called the cutest couple in college. The early stages of their relationship were filled with love, respect, and care for each other. They often showered each other with sweet gestures and exchanged gifts on important milestones. They were often seen smiling and hugging in photos, accompanied by heartfelt messages and declarations of love. To those around them, it seemed like they were destined to be together and begin their journey of lifelong happiness. Jordan and Alex quickly decided to move in together. As students, they relied heavily on the financial support of their parents, who accepted the couple's relationship. Alex's parents even liked Jordan, considering her a responsible and serious girl. Jordan planned to become a history teacher. She had a very good impression on those around her. However, over time, Jordan's behavior began to change. She became more and more controlling of Alex, and the situation got worse. Alex felt pressured to report her every move to Jordan. Jordan checked his personal correspondence, including his phone, emails, and social media, without hesitation. She often exploded in fits of jealousy, but Alex, being in love, tried to ignore this behavior. When Jordan began to choose his clothes, forcing him to wear only what she picked. Over time, Jordan continues to limit Alex's social life. She decides who he can and cannot spend time with, and when, ultimately controlling who he meets. As Alex's relationship with Jordan continued, connections with those around him began to break down. His family and childhood friends were cut off from him, but he seemed oblivious to the situation. Despite their seemingly perfect public image, Jordan was controlling Alex's interactions, deleting his phone contacts without his knowledge and blocking his loved ones. She also responded to messages on his behalf, often being rude and insulting. Jordan would delete chat histories, leaving Alex unaware of what he had said to others. As a result, people began to distance themselves from him. Alex's twin brother noticed that Jordan was preventing them from communicating with Alex. At the same time, their parents also noticed changes in Alex's behavior, causing them to become concerned. Alex began to pull away from his family and those close to him. He stopped visiting, even on holidays. When his mother tried to reach out, she was met with rudeness. On the rare occasions she managed to speak with him, she urged Alex to end his relationship, warning that it would not end well. However, Alex refused to listen and defended Jordan, insisting she cared for him and meant no harm. The family soon discovered that Alex's girlfriend was behaving in a controlling manner. Jordan had convinced him to drop out of college, quit sports, and get a job. She then controlled his income, spending it on herself and entertainment. Concerned about Alex, his parents tried to intervene and convince Alex to leave Jordan, but he refused to listen to their concerns. In 2013, during Jordan's 18th birthday celebration at a country hotel, Jordan's behavior became alarming. As night fell and the guests began to leave, she disappeared without a word. Alex frantically searched for her, and the next morning Jordan stumbled back to their room, heavily intoxicated. When Alex asked where she had been, Jordan attacked him with aggressive actions and words. 2 months later, at Alex's 18th birthday party, Jordan got into a fight in front of his family and friends. Jordan assaulted a 15-year-old neighbor girl who was an acquaintance of Alex's family and had been invited to the party. Jordan saw the woman's intimate behavior with Alex, and Jordan became angry and attacked the girl by pulling her hair and scratching her face. Although Jordan eventually calmed down, the incident exposed her true nature to everyone present. Alex's parents and brother advised him to end the relationship because of Jordan's aggressive and unreasonable behavior. Alex took their advice for the first time and admitted that Jordan had overreacted. Alex spoke to Jordan that night, telling her that he had decided not to move back into their apartment and would instead live with his parents. After the breakup, Alex continued his studies and continued working, gradually losing contact with Jordan. On New Year's Eve 2014, Jordan surprised Alex by calling to tell her she was pregnant. Alex was surprised and delighted. Jordan apologized for not sharing the news sooner, fearing that he would no longer want to see her. When Alex's parents learned that they were expecting a grandchild, they invited Jordan to move in with them. Jordan accepted their offer and moved in with them. Jordan and Alex eventually got married, and 3 months later, they welcomed a son named William. The young family was initially filled with happiness and contentment. For a short time, Jordan tried her best to please Alex and rekindle the flame of their love. However, when William, their son, was 6 months old, Jordan became pregnant again. As the due date approached, Jordan became increasingly irritable and demanding, insisting that they move out of his parents' house immediately. Attributing her behavior to hormonal changes, Alex finally gave in and rented a place for them in the city. In the summer of 2015, Alex and his wife Jordan welcomed their second child, a daughter named Alice. Alex was overjoyed and felt grateful for his family. However, after the move, Jordan's behavior changed and her controlling nature resurfaced. She forbade Alex from communicating with his family and prevented his parents from seeing their grandchildren. Despite this, she continued to accept financial help from them and would occasionally even ask Alex to request money from his parents. Within a few months of marriage, Jordan psychologically manipulated and dominated her husband, stripping him of his autonomy and subjecting him to her complete control. She frequently belittled and insulted him, gradually escalating the abuse. The situation began when they were renovating their house, and Jordan became increasingly dissatisfied with Alex's efforts. One day, Jordan became angry after Alex expressed his frustration. In a fit of rage, Jordan threw a hammer at Alex's head, causing a deep gash. As Alex clutched his wound in shock and struggled to stay conscious, he begged Jordan for help or to call an ambulance. However, Jordan responded with indifference, telling him to crawl away and die. Jordan then left Alex without help, going into another room to watch television. The next 3 years of Alex's life were marked by non-stop moral and physical suffering. Despite this, his deep-seated depression numbed him to the escalating threats and abuse he faced. He continued working to provide for his family, but his frustration and discontent with his wife grew. Alex endured humiliation at home, being forced to sleep on the floor without a bed, blanket, or pillow, and no longer allowed access to the kitchen. He was forced to eat leftovers, often leaving him hungry, as Jordan controlled his finances, taking all his money, preventing him from buying anything outside the house. Jordan also disrupted Alex's sleep. Whenever Alex fell asleep, she would brutally attack him, hitting him on the head, cutting him, or pouring boiling water on him. As a result, Alex would wake up in excruciating pain, often bleeding or burned. He would then treat and bandage his wounds with whatever he could find, while Jordan calmly returned to bed. Over time, Alex grew numb to this abuse, eventually losing the will to resist. Alex is facing a brutal life, but neighbors and acquaintances believe the couple had a happy marriage. Jordan presented a perfect image on social media by posting old photos with captions expressing her love for her husband and how lucky she was to have found each other. However, the shocking reality is that she violently attacked Alex, knocked out his teeth and cut his arm with a knife, leaving deep wounds. Furthermore, Alex suffered severe burns and was unable to seek medical help, forced to treat his injuries with makeshift items such as plastic wrap and adhesive tape at home. The couple's neighbors frequently heard screams coming from the house, prompting some to call the police out of concern. However, whenever this happened, Jordan would convince the officers that everything was fine, and they would leave. During a subsequent police visit, one of the officers noticed that the husband, Alex, had a fresh wound with blood running down his arm. He also appeared malnourished and had various bruises on his face. When Jordan tried to explain that her husband had mental health issues and sometimes harmed himself, the officer was unconvinced. Instead, they called paramedics, and Alex was taken to the hospital. The doctors were extremely worried about Alex's condition when he was admitted to the hospital. He was almost lifeless, and the severity of the injuries, especially on his arms, Alex's body was severely burned, with second- and third-degree burns covering significant areas. His physical condition was extremely weak. Further examination revealed that the ligaments in Alex's shoulder were severely damaged, possibly due to repeated beatings. There was also a deep gash on his forearm, and the doctor found that Alex had lost several teeth and had multiple hematomas. At that moment, Jordan rushed into the hospital, insisting on Alex being discharged and emphasizing that she was responsible for Alex's health. Although Jordan insisted that nothing unusual had happened and that these were self-inflicted injuries, her tone did not convince anyone. Therefore, it was decided that she would be taken to the police station for further questioning. Initially, Jordan denied any wrongdoing, maintaining Alex was self-harming. However, when Alex's parents arrived after visiting him in the hospital, Jordan's story changed. She began to describe in detail the abuse she inflicted on Alex, claiming she treated him like a dog and that he couldn't escape her. At the same time, Jordan alleged that Alex's supposed infidelity and deliberate provocation led to her violent behavior. She also stated that he was mentally ill and had a history of self-injury. Alex's parents refuted these claims, but Alex himself was initially hesitant to testify against his wife. It wasn't until after receiving medical treatment and counseling that Alex felt brave enough to share the horrific experiences he endured at home over the years. Jordan wasn't overly concerned about her upcoming trial, expecting at most an administrative penalty. However, after all the testimony was heard, the judge found 22-year-old Jordan Worth guilty of serious charges. These included deliberately causing severe bodily harm, both physical and emotional abuse, and controlling behavior, Jordan was sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Not even her status as a mother of 2 young children reduced the severity of the sentence. The court's decision shocked Jordan. Jordan's children remained in the care of their father and grandparents while she served her sentence. After years of recovering from her trauma, Alex now devotes her time to helping others, especially victims of domestic violence. After serving 5 years of a 7.5-year sentence, Jordan is set to be paroled on July 4, 2023. As part of her parole, she is prohibited from contacting Alex Skeel and their children. Jordan has started a new life, is engaged to Adam Steff, and is expecting their child.